Chapter 450. Sure did not move at all, but in just half a minute, he had killed more than 100 spiritual psyche masters of the Dragon Clan. This shocked all of the Dragon Clan members. Even Lord Long, the leader of the Dragon Clan, was shocked. The aura of this giant dragon was only equivalent to that of a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. However, he had a huge spiritual sense. A spiritual psyche master was not scary, and neither was a Desolate Master. When these two were combined, it was the most terrifying. With the spiritual sense of a spiritual psyche master, and the body of a Desolate Master, how could he not be strong? It seemed that his true combat strength was comparable to that of a level 10 Desolate Master. At the same time, the disciples of the Dragon Clan were also shocked. However, after they recovered from the shock, their hearts were filled with anger and hatred. Kill him! Kill him! Today, we must not let him leave the Dragon Valley alive. Perhaps it was because the disciples of the Dragon Clan had absorbed the dragon's blood, so they had the pride and unwillingness to admit defeat in their characters. You are very strong, right? I will kill you. Therefore, in the midst of the battle cries, thousands of Dragon Clan members condensed their energy weapons. They tried to bombard Sure. However, bang 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 bang. The disciples of the Dragon Clan once again set off firecrackers. As long as it was a level 5 Desolate Master, the disciples of the Dragon Clan exploded. At the same time, Sure spread out his wings to protect his body. Boom 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 boom. Those people's energy weapons bombarded Sure's wings. However, they were unable to cause any damage to his tattered wings. On the contrary, the bodies of the thousands of Dragon Clan members who were level 5 Desolate Master and below all exploded. This scene once again made all of the Dragon Clan members present feel fear. They originally thought that the spiritual psyche masters' bodies were not strong enough and would explode. However, now it seemed that as long as it was a level 5 Desolate Master and below, it would explode. This kid's spiritual sense was terrifying. What they did not know was that Sure had only used 30% of his dragon's will. He had to be on guard against the old Patriarch underground at all times. Otherwise, his draconic will alone could kill all the Dragon Clan's level 5 Desolate Hunters. However, what puzzled him was that the old Patriarch should have appeared when he killed those spiritual readers. How could they watch him kill so many Desolate Hunters after he had killed all of the spiritual reader masters? Why hasn't he appeared yet? However, this was not the time to dwell on this. Sure set up a virtual sentry tower next to him. This way, he could have a panoramic view of his surroundings. At the same time, he flapped his wings and soared into the sky. It let out a dragon's roar. Roar! Previously, he had intended to subdue the dragon race. But since they had no intention of surrendering, then he would just kill them all. Since he was going to be the bloodthirsty demon dragon, he might as well go all the way. Seeing this, the Dragon Clan's Patriarch turned to Long Feng and Long Yun and said, "This is your chance." Feng and Yun naturally knew what the Dragon Clan leader meant. Originally, they were supposed to capture Sure and interrogate Sure about his purpose in coming here. That would be the end of the test. In the end, the two of them had completely failed the test. But now that the Patriarch had said this, it was equivalent to giving them another chance. As long as they killed this bloodthirsty demon dragon, the two of them would definitely be recorded in the history of the Dragon Clan. Moreover, Long Shuang's genetic martial arts had been crippled, so he had completely lost his chance. Then if they killed this bloodthirsty demon dragon, the Dragon Clan's Patriarch would definitely be one of them. Thinking of this, the two of them nodded. Then they condensed their energy weapons. A pair of wings condensed behind them. With a flap of their wings, they arrived in the sky. Facing Sure, who was more than 150 meters tall, the two of them were not afraid at all. Instead, they were a little excited. Today the two of us will slay the dragon. Their energy weapons were also in the form of dragon claws. The two of them raised their energy weapons at the same time. Boom! Two thick pillars of light shot out from their energy weapons and blasted towards Sure's body. Boom boom! These two energy weapons bombarded Sure's body. Sure's body did not even sway. Sure sneered. He suddenly turned around, and that 70-meter-long giant tail swept across. Bang bang! It smashed fiercely onto the two of them. And it brought the two of them with it, directly smashing into the cliff behind the waterfall beside them. Rumble. Water splashed everywhere and huge rocks flew everywhere. The waterfall cliff immediately collapsed. The two of them were also buried by the rocks. As for the waterfall, it was no longer a waterfall, but a river. When the surrounding crowd saw this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. The two strongest prodigies of the dragon clan couldn't even withstand a single blow from this giant dragon. And their attacks landed on the giant dragon, but they were useless. One had to know that the aura of this giant dragon was far inferior to the two of them. In the end, the combat power displayed was exactly the opposite. This was really out of everyone's expectations. But at this moment, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the place that had just collapsed. Rumble. Huge rocks flew everywhere. At the same time, a huge wave more than 30 meters high splashed up. At the top of the huge wave, two figures suddenly soared into the sky. Everyone looked carefully. These two figures were none other than Long Feng and Long Yun from before. The two figures stopped in the sky. They looked at each other. Then, they flapped their wings at the same time and flew into the sky. They flew over 10,000 meters in the sky. The two of them paused for a moment. Then they turned their heads at the same time and flew towards Immortal below. While flying, energy once again shot out from the energy weapons of the two. It bombarded towards Immortal. At the same time, the two of them did not stop. Instead, they merged with the two energies and blasted towards Immortal at the same time. Long Feng's voice came from the energy. Feng Wuxiang. Long Yun's voice also came from the other energy. Yin Wuchang. Then, the two of them spoke at the same time. Wind and cloud combine Maha Limitless. In the next moment, the two energies actually merged into one. This new energy kept changing in the air. One moment it was like a longsword, the next moment it was like a saber, the next moment it was like a spear. However, no matter what shape it took, its target remained the same. It stabbed straight towards Immortal, who was about 500 meters away from the ground. The Dragon Clan's patriarch clenched his fists slightly. Wind and cloud combine, Maha Limitless, was a peerless divine skill passed down by the Dragon Clan. The two people who needed to practice this divine skill were both extremely talented people. Moreover, the two of them must not have the slightest bit of animosity between them. Only in this way could they successfully use wind and cloud combine, Maha Limitless. And the power of this divine skill was extremely terrifying. It was said that as long as this divine skill was used, it would be an invincible existence in the entire continent. Even the most elite Grand Desolate Masters would have to avoid this divine skill. Chapter 451. Wind and Cloud Combination, Maha Immeasurable. The figures of the two people, together with their energy, bombarded Immortal below. The people on the ground could feel the enormous pressure of that energy. Even the trees on the ground snapped under this enormous pressure. The houses on the ground began to collapse under the immense pressure. Some of the weaker Dragon Clan disciples were unable to raise their heads under this enormous pressure. They had no choice but to use the energy in their bodies to resist this enormous pressure. The Dragon Clan patriarch Long Ba raised his head to look at this energy. There seemed to be a hint of sparkling in his eyes. In his lifetime, he had finally witnessed the birth of this divine skill. In fact, as early as 50 years ago, the two of them had already begun to practice wind and cloud combination. But they had never succeeded. Who would have thought that the attack of this bloodthirsty demon dragon just now seemed to have opened up their conception and governing vessels? The two of them finally succeeded in using wind and cloud combination for the first time. As for Long Shuang, who had lost his arm, he suddenly realized something. It turned out that he had never been the most talented person in the eyes of the patriarch. Wind and cloud combination was passed on to Long Feng and Long Yun, but it was not passed on to him. He seemed to have obtained the dragon vein, but the incomplete dragon vein was actually only used to assist in his cultivation. Other than that, there was no other help, unless he could make up for the incomplete dragon vein. At this moment, Long Shuang had a feeling that the whole world knew that he was an idiot, and only he felt that he was awesome. His body fell to the ground weakly, and at this moment, Emoshar also felt the power of wind and cloud combination. The dragon clan actually had such a divine skill. In his senses, such a divine skill was enough to instantly kill a level 3 Grand Desolate Master. Helpless, Emoshar had no choice but to use his mind to instantly vanish on the spot. This was not teleportation, because the Dragon Clan had used some unknown method to seal the space of the Dragon Valley. Therefore, teleportation could not be used here. He hid in his own miniature space. At this moment, the energy of wind and cloud combination had already blasted at the position where Emoshar was just now. However, because of Emoshar's sudden disappearance, the energy lost its target. It was as if a punch with all its strength had landed on a ball of cotton. Feng Yun and Feng Yun quickly separated. If this continued, just the aftermath of their attack would be enough to wipe out more than half of the Dragon Clan disciples nearby. However, after the two clones, they were both panting heavily. Although wind and cloud fusion was extremely powerful, it consumed a lot of energy. Furthermore, he hadn't been able to release all of the energy just now, so there would be a backlash from the energy. This would also have a negative impact on both of them. Beside them, the clan chief and great elder were frowning. They had clearly sealed the space in the Dragon Valley, but that brat had suddenly disappeared. Where did he go? Last time, this brat had disappeared into thin air, and now he was here again. It was indeed a little strange. At this moment, Emoshar's enormous figure appeared once again. Seeing this, the two men hurriedly leaped up, wanting to use wind and cloud fusion again. At the same time, they looked at the patriarch. The clan leader nodded at them, telling them not to worry. This time, they would not let him disappear again. At the same time, the clan leader tossed out an item. That thing instantly split into more than 10 in the air. It surrounded Emoshar. An energy net popped out from each item and covered Emoshar. Seeing this, Emoshar opened his huge mouth. Boom! He spat out a mouthful of black ice breath. Immediately, the temperature within a 5-kilometer radius plummeted. Stones, houses, trees, rivers, almost all of them were frozen in an instant. Those Dragon Clan disciples whose strength was below that of a level 8 Desolate Hunter had no time to dodge. Under the mystic ice breath, they were instantly frozen into ice sculptures. The large nets that flew towards Emoshar were also frozen. They fell to the ground and smashed into ice shards. Dragon Wind and Dragon Cloud had just flown into the air. But at this moment, they were instantly frozen. Although their strength had reached that of a level 10 Desolate Hunter, but Emoshar's black ice breath was targeted at the two of them. The two of them were frozen in midair and fell to the ground. They still tried to use their energy to break through this ice seal. But Emoshar's dragon claw had already reached over. Crack, crack. The two of them were caught by the dragon claw in midair. Instantly, their muscles and bones were broken and blood splattered. At this point, Wind and Cloud were dead. Seeing this, Lord Long couldn't help but take a step back. He had nurtured Wind and Cloud for more than 50 years, hoping that the two of them could combine Wind and Cloud to make the Dragon Clan famous throughout the Flaming Origin continent. But he didn't expect that the first time he saw Wind and Cloud combination would be the last time. And when Long Shuang saw this scene, she was actually gloating. Who would have thought that the two people who were flaunting their strength just now were already dead? As the saying goes, fortune and misfortune lie in wait. If she had practiced Wind and Cloud combination, the one who would die now would probably be her. The rest of the Dragon Clan disciples couldn't help but take 2 steps back when they saw Wind and Cloud being killed in an instant. As Dragon Clan disciples, they naturally knew about Wind and Cloud combination. Maha Immeasurable. Wind and Cloud combination, Maha Immeasurable, had no fixed move. But its power was something that all Dragon Clan disciples yearned for. From ancient times until now, Wind and Cloud combination had only appeared a total of 3 times in history. Every time it appeared, it was an absolutely invincible existence. It was an existence that could change the direction of history. But this 4th time it was broken by someone. Even Wind and Cloud were killed in an instant by the opponent. How strong was this guy? In fact, they didn't know that if Emoshar really took Wind and Cloud as an opponent, the two of them would have been killed in an instant the first time. There was no chance for them to use Wind and Cloud combination at all. Emosher was just trying to preserve his strength as much as possible, because there was an old monster of the dragon clan underground. He had been waiting for that old monster to appear. Before that old monster appeared, he couldn't expose all of his strength. But what surprised him was that of the 3 most talented youths of the dragon clan, one was crippled and the other 2 were killed by him. Under such circumstances, that old monster still didn't appear. What was he planning? Did he have to wait for him to destroy the entire dragon clan before coming out? What was the point of appearing at that time? At this time, when the dragon clan's first elder saw that the 3 most talented geniuses of the dragon clan were either dead or crippled, anger rose from his heart, and evil grew in his heart. He said to the dragon clan patriarch beside him, "Patriarch, Long Long requests to fight." But the patriarch shook his head. "Long Long, you and I are the last 2 mountains of the dragon clan. How can you easily fight?" Chapter 452. Long Long, you and I are the last 2 mountains of the dragon clan. How can we go to war so easily? Patriarch Lord Long stopped Grand Elder Long Long's idea. Naturally, Emosher had already heard Lord Long's words. He was a little puzzled. The dragon clan still had the old patriarch hiding underground. From his voice, he should be much stronger than the patriarch and Grand Elder. Why did the patriarch say that he and Grand Elder were the last 2 mountains? Could it be that there was something that was hard to say? Thinking of this, Emosher carefully looked through the patriarch's memories. A person's memories were huge, especially for a grand desolate master like Lord Long, who had lived for nearly 1,000 years. His memories were so vast that it was unimaginable. It would take at least 10 minutes to look through his memories. While attacking the dragons on the ground, Emosher flipped through the memories of the dragon clan patriarch. About 5 minutes later, he found that he had missed something when he looked through the patriarch's memories for the first time. It turned out that the old patriarch of the dragon clan hiding underground had gone into seclusion to make a breakthrough. He had been in seclusion for more than 50 years. He was at the critical moment of his breakthrough, and was about to break through. If he forcefully came out of seclusion now, these 50 years would be wasted. Moreover, his lifespan was almost up. If he did not break through, he would die of old age soon. Therefore, he had to break through to extend his lifespan. Seeing this, Emosher understood. "Since you don't dare to come out, I will destroy your entire dragon clan." At this moment, the patriarch of the dragon clan, Lord Long, saw that the desolate hunters in front of Emosher were just food. He immediately ordered, "All desolate hunters retreat. Grand desolate masters, take the lead." The desolate hunters who were attacking Emosher retreated one after another. The more than 100 grand desolate masters went to greet Emosher. Emosher secretly sneered. He opened his mouth and let out a long and domineering dragon roar. Roar! In the next moment, his throat had turned fiery red. Then, a ball of fiery red energy was spat out from his mouth. Boom! Scarlet flame dragon breath. This ball of flame energy was as hot as lava. Everything within a radius of 1,000 meters turned into a sea of fire. The desolate hunters who were unable to retreat in time screamed and wailed in the sea of fire. As for those grand desolate masters, they hurriedly condensed energy barriers to resist the scorching flames. At first, they were full of information. The bloodthirsty demon dragon only had the aura of a level 5 desolate hunter. Their barrier should be able to easily block the dragon's fire energy. However, they soon discovered that they were wrong. The flames contained a terrifyingly high temperature. Their light shields melted like snow in front of these flames. "Oh no, I can't hold on. How is this possible? Its aura is clearly only that of a 5th-ranked desolate hunter. Dodge." Amidst the screams, the grand desolate masters all dodged. Those who were quick enough were barely able to escape. Those who were slightly slower had already drawn the fire to themselves. "Ah! No! Quickly put out the fire!" Their bodies were burning with raging flames as they screamed and ran. The grand desolate masters who had activated their water-type energy hurriedly used their water-type energy to extinguish the fire. However, they soon discovered that their water-type energy was unable to extinguish such a fire. Only now did they realize how terrifying the dragon's energy was. The dragon's fire energy was something that they as humans, could not extinguish. At this moment, the level 3 Grand Desolate Master Patriarch, Lord Long, quickly covered these people with his ice-type energy. Only then did the flames on their bodies quickly disappear. Emosher turned his head and looked at Patriarch Lord Long. Lord Long also turned his head and looked straight at Emosher. His gaze was filled with undisguised provocation. After extinguishing the fire just now, he already understood. The bloodthirsty demon dragon's true strength was about the same as his, a level 3 Grand Desolate Master. As long as he and Grand Elder Long worked together, it should not be difficult to kill this guy. Emosher naturally understood the Grand Elder's thoughts. After he transformed into the bloodthirsty demon dragon, he had not truly fought with his full strength. Therefore, he also wanted to have a hearty battle. However, he knew that this was not realistic, because there was still an old monster hiding underground. If he consumed too much energy here, wouldn't it be difficult for him to deal with that old monster if he really couldn't hold it in and came out? Thinking of this, he said in his mind, "System, designated reward, Virus 0. The system's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Frowny face. Designated reward requires 1 million evolution points. Virus 0 requires 10 billion evolution points. Would you like to confirm the sign-in? Emosher shook his head helplessly. The price had increased again. Fortunately, the evolution points he had accumulated before had already broken through 1 trillion. Therefore, these 10 billion evolution points were nothing to Missouri-shire. Soon, a Virus 0 appeared in his hand. Of course, the virus was too small for these people to notice it. Emosher turned his head and looked at a Grand Desolate Master. He flicked his finger lightly. Suddenly, the Virus 0 bounced onto the Grand Desolate Master's chest. Then with a thought, he wanted to detonate the Virus 0. However, the system's voice sounded in his mind again. Frowny face. With the host's current strength, the Virus 0 can only be detonated on enemies below the Grand Desolate Master realm, and can only destroy enemies below the Grand Desolate Master realm. Hearing this, Emosher was a little speechless. It seemed that as his strength increased, the power of the Virus 0 was relatively declining. However, it was already powerful enough to destroy enemies below the Grand Desolate Master realm. After all, there were less than 200 Grand Desolate Masters in the Flaming Origin continent. Moreover, more than 100 Grand Desolate Masters were going to be destroyed today. Therefore, this Virus 0 was invincible enough. With a thought, he put away the Virus 0 on the Grand Desolate Master. Then he implanted it into Long Shuang's body. At this moment, the Dragon Patriarch let out a loud shout. All disciples of the Dragon Clan, listen up. Activate the Dragon Clan's bloodline and use the giant dragon formation. His voice spread throughout the entire Dragon Valley, that was over 100 kilometers in length. In the next moment, the aura of all the Dragon Clan disciples in the Dragon Valley soared. Almost instantly, they reached the peak of level 10 Desolate Master. At the same time, all of them slowly floated up. Seeing this, Emosher once again looked through the memories of the Dragon Clan Patriarch. What was the Dragon Clan's bloodline? What was the giant dragon formation? Soon he understood. It turned out that these people had drunk the giant dragon's blood, and had a trace of the giant dragon's dragon chi in their bodies. When they used a special method to activate this trace of dragon chi, they could reach the peak of their battle strength. At the same time, the giant dragon formation could condense everyone's battle strength. When they used the giant dragon formation, their combined battle strength was equivalent to a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. Chapter 453. When Emosher learned from the memories of the Dragon Clan leader that the Dragon Clan bloodline and the giant dragon formation were extremely powerful, he was also a little surprised. The Dragon Clan, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, was still quite something. With the strength of more than 200,000 Desolate Hunters, they were actually able to erupt with the strength of a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. This was really surprising. However, this was not like those movies or novels. Emosher would not wait for his opponent to release their ultimate move before making his move. The last method was to not give his opponent a chance to release their ultimate move. With a thought, Emosher planted the Virus 0 in a Desolate Hunter's body. With another thought, It was as if there was an invisible shockwave, with the desolate hunter as the center, spreading out in all directions. In an instant, within a radius of 100 kilometers, all living creatures below the Grand Desolate Master level turned blood red. Whether it was the desolate hunters, the mutated desolate beasts, the trees, the flowers, the fishes, or the birds. Looking down from the sky, with the desolate hunter as the center, a blood-red circle could be seen spreading out in an instant. It formed a huge circle with a radius of 100 kilometers. Within this circle, everything had turned blood-red. Those desolate hunters who had just activated their dragon clan bloodline, and were flying towards the sky, wanting to condense the giant dragon formation, all became sluggish and fell to the ground one after another. Immediately after, Emosher's dragon consciousness moved. Shwa. The body of a desolate hunter flowed onto the ground like quicksand. The body of another desolate hunter beside him also flowed down like quicksand. It was not just humans. The infected trees, flowers, fishes, and birds at the side. In short, all living creatures that had not reached the Grand Desolate Master level flowed onto the ground like quicksand. They turned into blood-red powder. In a short 5 seconds, more than 200,000 desolate hunters of the Dragon Clan were annihilated. At the same time, the killing points in Emosher's mind were changing crazily. It was increasing rapidly. In the end, it stopped at over 200,000. Killing points, 230,600. 100,000. If he wanted to level up now, he would need to reach 1 million killing points. Now that he had obtained more than 200,000 killing points so easily, Emosher was really happy. Contrary to his mood, all the Grand Desolate Masters of the Dragon Clan felt the opposite. They looked at the blood-red world around them. Seeing the people they were familiar with turn into dust like quicksand, they were all shocked and angry. What shocked him the most was what kind of strange trick this guy had used to turn all the desolate hunters into dust. This was clearly beyond their scope of understanding. They were angry because there were more than 230,000 people in the Dragon Clan. Now, in just a few seconds, there were only 100 of them left. How could they not be angry? In particular, Lord Long, the chief of the Dragon Clan, was trembling in shock and anger. The tens of thousands of years of inheritance of the Dragon Clan was about to end in his hands. And the culprit behind all of this was the bloodthirsty demonic dragon before him. Preposterous, simply preposterous. In their shock and anger, everyone looked at Emosher with eyes that seemed to be able to spit fire. Kill. Kill him. Kill this bastard. These dragon race Grand Desolate Masters had nearly lost their rationality in their anger. They had the blood of dragons in their bodies, so it was impossible for them to retreat and run away. The prideful genes of dragons did not allow them to run away. Then they could only fight. They could only kill the enemy in front of them. However, although the chief was angry, he was still rational. Everyone else in the Dragon Clan was already dead, but fortunately, none of the Grand Desolate Masters had died. No matter where these 100 Grand Desolate Masters went, they would definitely be an invincible force. When the time came, with these 100 Grand Desolate Masters, he would be able to quickly rebuild the Dragon Clan. At that time, the Dragon Clan would still be the strongest existence on this continent. Therefore, he ordered everyone retreat. Although the Dragon Clan was angry, with the chief's order, they seemed to have sobered up a little. Although they were unwilling, they still slowly retreated. Seeing this, Emosher sneered in his heart. Retreat now? Don't you think it's a little too late? Thinking of this, he flapped his wings and soared into the sky. After circling in the sky once, he was about to dive down to the ground. However, at this moment, an old but powerful voice suddenly came from underground. Bastard Andanruo. In the next moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky without any warning, confronting Emosher from a distance. This person had a pair of black wings behind his back, hovering in the sky. A head of messy white hair fluttered in the wind. He was wearing a black robe without any decorations. He looked slovenly, like a sloppy old man. However, the aura emitted from his body suppressed everyone present. It even far surpassed Emosher. When the great elder below saw this person, he could not help but be surprised. Old chief. When the other Grand Desolate Masters saw this, they were all surprised. It's really the old chief. The old chief is really still alive. That's great, our dragon clan is saved. I heard that the old chief had already become a level 5 Grand Desolate Master many years ago. I don't believe that a level 5 Grand Desolate Master can't deal with this huge dragon. When the Chief Lord Long saw this, his eyes were filled with excitement, and his eyes were flickering. He hurriedly lowered his head and half knelt on the ground. Lord Long, lead all the disciples of the dragon clan. When he said this, he paused for a moment. How could there be any disciples of the dragon clan? More than 200,000 disciples were already dead. His Adam's apple squirmed, and he said with grief and indignation, lead all the remaining disciples of the dragon clan to welcome the old chief. All the Grand Desolate Masters of the dragon clan also lowered their heads and half knelt on the ground. The remaining disciples of the dragon clan welcomed the old chief. However, the old chief did not even look at them. Not only did he not look, the old chief was actually cursing in his heart. Useless trash. Just because you can't kill this kid, you force me to come out of seclusion. Not only can I not break through again, after coming out of seclusion this time, my lifespan will soon be up. It's all because of you. However, he obviously could not say this in front of Immortal. Moreover, the dragon clan was in a life and death situation. As a member of the dragon clan, and the old chief of the dragon clan, he naturally had the responsibility to stand up and protect the dragon clan. At this moment his eyes were fixed on Immortal. The aura on his body had already reached the peak. Judging from his aura, he was only one step away from becoming a level 6 Grand Desolate Master. A level 6 Grand Desolate Master was almost the peak existence in the entire Flaming Origin continent. His eyes were filled with murderous intent and fury. From his mouth came a voice filled with killing intent. Kid, you dare to behave atrociously in my dragon clan, die. Chapter 454. The old patriarch of the dragon clan said in a voice filled with killing intent. Kid, you dare to behave atrociously in my dragon clan? Die. Then his aura rose again, almost reaching the limit of a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. Seeing this, all the disciples of the dragon clan were secretly delighted. The old patriarch's aura was so strong and terrifying. After that kid transformed into a giant dragon, he was powerful and could fight against a level 1 Grand Desolate Master as a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. However, this was the end of it. It was impossible for him to challenge a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. In fact, they were right. With Immortal's strength, it was naturally impossible for him to challenge a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. If it was so easy to challenge a Grand Desolate Master, there wouldn't be so few Grand Desolate Masters in this world. Moreover, this was a peak level 5 Grand Desolate Master. He was almost the number 1 person in the entire continent. How could Immortal defeat such an existence? However, Immortal still had his trump card. He sneered and let out a dragon's roar. So what if I behave atrociously? Then with a thought, another figure appeared in the sky without any warning. Its 1,500-meter-long body meandered in the sky like a dragon. With the sea dragon clone, what could you do to me if I peed? Let alone behave atrociously in the dragon clan. The sea dragon clone was 1,500 meter long, and had a diameter of more than 70 meter long. 1/3 of the sky in the Dragon Valley was occupied by this body. The light in the Dragon Valley was much dimmer now. Its scales shone with a dark black luster under the sunlight. On its forehead, there were 2 huge bulges that seemed to be swollen. 4 thick and sharp claws, each of which was like a towering tree. It opened its mouth and let out a roar that seemed to want to swallow everything in the world. Ayo! Roar! With this roar, all living things within a 500-kilometer radius trembled. When all the disciples of the dragon clan saw this, their expressions changed drastically. Just a moment ago, they thought that their old patriarch was already invincible in this world, and could easily kill this brat. But now, compared to this huge creature, their old patriarch seemed so small. The old clan leader of the dragon tribe was also secretly shocked at this moment. This creature's aura was similar to his. But why did he feel an inexplicable sense of fear when facing it from afar? Was it because its body was too big? Impossible. He had lived for almost 1,000 years, and he had seen many creatures that were larger than it. However, there was no creature that could make him feel that kind of fear. Why was this happening? Just as he was secretly astonished, the sea dragon clone had already moved. Its figure flickered as it flew toward the dragon clan's patriarch. Although the dragon clan's clan leader was terrified, he had no way out. If he retreated, the dragon clan would be exterminated. He roared, "You're courting death." At the next moment, a genetic martial art condensed in his right arm. Moreover, the moment his genetic weapon appeared, its edges had already lit up. Clearly, energy had been added to it. However, he didn't shoot out this energy. Instead, he attached it to his genetic martial art to fight. High-level battles often required the most basic fighting methods. The reason why his genetic martial art didn't release energy was because that kind of fighting method wasted too much energy. Moreover, shooting energy from a distance would give the enemy time to dodge. Therefore, this kind of fighting method was far worse than adding energy to the weapon before fighting in close combat. At this moment, he was using this kind of fighting method. His figure flashed, and he was already behind the sea dragon clone. His speed was extremely fast. He must have activated his wind attribute talent. When he arrived behind the sea dragon clone, his genetic martial art stabbed fiercely at the back of the sea dragon clone. Crackle, a few ear-piercing sounds were heard. The back of the sea dragon clone rubbed against his genetic martial art, creating a series of sparks. However, that was all. After this series of sparks, he looked at the back of the sea dragon clone. Not to mention being injured, there wasn't even a trace left behind. Seeing this, the dragon clan's patriarch was shocked. What a strong defense. At this moment, the sea dragon clone turned around and whipped its tail over. He hurriedly used his wind attribute energy and dodged quickly. The sea dragon clone's giant tail, which was more than 70 meters thick, narrowly flashed under him. He thought to himself that it was a close call. This guy's speed wasn't slow either. However, before he could finish his thought, he suddenly felt a gust of wind blow past. He was involuntarily swept into the gust of wind. It turned out that the sea dragon clone's huge tail swept past too quickly. The airflow brought him in. This was the disadvantage of being a wind attribute cultivator. His body was too light. Fortunately, as a wind attribute cultivator, he still had a good understanding of the wind. Relying on his experience, he quickly stabilized his body. However, just as he stabilized his body, he found that a huge shadow had already smashed towards him. Bang! Before he could say the verb in his mouth, he was hit by the sea dragon clone's huge tail. It turned out that Immortal knew that this person was a wind attribute cultivator, and was extremely fast. It was impossible to hit him with a single blow. Therefore, his first attack was only to stir up a gust of wind, and sweep the old guy into the airflow. When he was involuntarily swept in, the sea dragon clone's second wave of attack had already arrived. There was nowhere for him to hide. Boom! The old patriarch of the dragon clan was like a fly that had been hit by a fly swatter as he crashed to the ground. He was smashed into the ground. Crack, crack, cracks began to spread all around him. All the disciples of the dragon clan were aghast when they saw this. They had thought that the old patriarch would definitely be able to destroy that brat. In the end, the old patriarch couldn't withstand a single blow from that giant creature. At this moment, in the huge pit on the ground, the old patriarch's face was covered in blood. Most of the aura on his body had dissipated. He had never dreamed that he, who was almost the #1 person on the continent, would one day be unable to withstand a single blow from a giant creature. At this moment, he was constantly trying to circulate the wind attribute energy in his body. He wanted to escape. Even if he knew that his time was up, even if he escaped today, he wouldn't live for long. However, survival was human instinct. Even he was no exception. However, at this moment, on the sea dragon clone's body, a blood-red tentacle shot over like an arrow. Puff, it pierced into his body. Then the tentacle retracted. The barbs on the tentacle immediately hooked his body and dragged him into the air. Chapter 455. A tentacle shot out from the body of the sea dragon clone. It dragged the old patriarch of the dragon clan, who was trying to escape, into the air. The old patriarch of the dragon clan wanted to struggle. But soon he realized that the tentacle had already grown into hundreds and thousands of tiny tentacles in his body. They crawled all over his muscles. If he tried to break free by force, his body would be torn apart. At the same time, as these tentacles continued to extend, his body was in intense pain. He kept struggling, and his legs kept trembling. However, this pain didn't last long. At a certain moment, hiss! The tentacles in his body quickly separated, tearing his body into hundreds and thousands of pieces. At this point, the strongest person of the dragon clan, the number one person on the continent, the old patriarch of the dragon clan, was dead. At the same time, the expressions of everyone in the dragon clan changed drastically. The old patriarch, who they had placed high hopes on, couldn't even last half a minute in front of this huge creature. He was easily torn to pieces. Then, was there any hope for the rest of them to survive? Thinking of this, they all turned to look at the patriarch. Seeing this, the patriarch of the dragon clan shook his head helplessly and closed his eyes in pain. At this moment, he had already seen through it. The dragon clan was finished. The dragon clan, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, was really ruined in his hands. He was the sinner of the dragon clan. Even if he died, he would have no face to see the ancestors of the dragon clan. However, he couldn't just watch the dragon clan be destroyed like this. He glanced at all the dragon clan grand desolate masters and said, "Disciples of the dragon clan, scatter and run. No matter who escapes, don't forget that you are the disciples of the dragon clan. One day, you must revitalize the dragon clan." All the disciples of the dragon clan were stunned when they heard this. They didn't expect that their dragon clan, known as the strongest faction on the continent, would one day have to run away. But under such circumstances, what else could they do but run? Thus, these 100 or so grand desolate masters fled in all directions. However, could they escape? In front of the speed of Immortal and the sea dragon clone, their so-called escape looked like a joke. With a thought from Immortal, more than 50 huge tentacles grew out of the sea dragon clone's body. Each tentacle is like a sharp arrow, piercing towards the bodies of these grand desolate masters. The bodies of the grand desolate masters were very strong. Even the genetic weapons of the desolate masters would not be able to harm them if they did not add energy. But in front of these tentacles, it was like a piece of paper. Puff, 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 puff. Everyone, including the patriarch and the great elder, was pierced by the tentacles. Moreover, once these tentacles entered their bodies, they would quickly absorb their blood, and use the nourishment of this blood to grow roots in their bodies. These roots would crawl all the muscles in their bodies at an extremely fast speed. In the end, if they used too much force, their muscles would be torn apart. It was literally being torn to pieces. Moreover, even if they didn't use any strength, the tentacles would quickly tear them apart. Rip, rip, rip. With the sound of cloth being torn apart, these people's bodies were all torn apart. In that instant, the entire Dragon Valley finally fell completely silent. Apart from the sound of flowing water, there was no other sound. The entire dragon race, the number one faction on the continent, had been destroyed by Immortal alone. Of course, one could not say that Immortal was the number one person on the continent just because of this. The flame-beginning continent was huge. 56 states, and each state was much, much larger than the previous Earth. In such a big place, Immortal did not know how many hidden experts there were. However, he knew that after annihilating the Dragon Clan, he had already entered the ranks of the top powerhouses. As long as he was given some more time, when he became a level 10 Desolate Master, the Sea Dragon clone might become a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. At that time, he would truly be standing at the top of the pyramid of the flame-beginning continent. Because no matter how exaggerated it was, there had never been an existence stronger than a Grand Desolate Master on the flame-beginning continent. What kind of realm was stronger than a Grand Desolate Master? No one knew. At this time, Immortal looked at the kill points in his mind. Kill points. 23160010000000. Every Grand Desolate Master killed gave him 10 kill points. Next, if he wanted to get more kill points, he would have to go to those hunting grounds to hunt infected creatures. Otherwise, he could not go on a killing spree all over the continent and kill those desolate masters. After all, although he was a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he had evolved from a human. He still had a human mind. It was impossible for him to go on a killing spree. Next, Emosher went through all of the dragon race's storehouses and treasure vaults. Many things of the dragon race could be used in the base. For example, the dragon race had an exaggerated number of hundreds of millions of crystal source stones. And this was only their inventory. In their Dragon Valley, there were as many as 3 crystal source veins. Emosher had the thought of simply moving the base here. But after thinking about it, he gave up for the time being. The base had just been developed, and the factory and other things had just been built. If he moved now, it would be a waste. However, he could not just leave the 3 crystal source veins to others. Emosher thought about it and left more than 100 virus clones here. These virus clones basically had the strength of a level 5 Desolate Master and a level 5 Long Nianshi. 100 level 5 Desolate Master and a level 5 Long Nianshi combined were equivalent to the strength of a few Grand Desolate Masters. In the end, Emosher put all the things he had plundered into his micro-world. Then, with a thought, he teleported 1,000 kilometers away. Now everyone in the dragon race had been wiped out. The dragon race's chief, great elder, and their old chief were all dead. Naturally, the spatial restriction could no longer take effect. Emosher easily teleported thousands of kilometers away. Then he found the right direction and flew in the direction of Hunting Island number 1. 2 days after Emosher left, the news gradually spread. There were overwhelming reports on the internet, on TV, and in all kinds of media. Shocking news. Dragon Valley slaughtered. Dragon race annihilated. Who wiped out the number 1 force in one night? Sorry Dragon race, Dragon Valley is not Dragon Valley. Sorry number 1 force, you are not enough. These reports were crazily spread among all the media. Everyone's first reaction when they heard the news was disbelief. Scram to the side. Dragon race annihilated? Kid, you must be crazy. I heard that the number 1 force of the dragon race has 40 to 50 Grand Desolate Masters. Who dares to touch them? 40 to 50? I heard that there are 70 to 80. Whoever dares to touch them is courting death. Chapter 456. After Emosher annihilated the Dragon Clan, he left the Dragon Valley and returned to the base. At the same time, the news of the annihilation of the Dragon Valley had spread across the entire continent. The annihilation of the Dragon Valley could be seen everywhere on the internet, television, various news media, and gossip literature. On a certain online forum, the Dragon Valley, which had been established for tens of thousands of years, was annihilated overnight. Who did this? The Dragon Valley is the number 1 force on the continent. All the other forces could only tremble in fear in front of the Dragon Valley. But now it has been annihilated. This is unbelievable. I was thinking of visiting the Dragon Clan when I became stronger in a few years. I didn't expect the Dragon Clan to be annihilated. According to reliable sources, the Dragon Clan has more than 70 Grand Desolate Masters, and more than 100 Spiritual Psyche Masters. This strength is enough to crush any force on the continent. Now that it has been annihilated, the person who did this must be extremely powerful. In a certain restaurant, people were watching the news report on the television and the aerial footage while eating. On the screen, the entire Dragon Valley had turned blood red. There were no trees, flowers, plants, animals, or humans. This was a stark contrast to the footage of the Dragon Valley in the past. An old man who looked to be in his 60s was shocked. To be able to annihilate the Dragon Valley, that person's strength is simply heaven-defying. Are you kidding? The Dragon Valley has more than 200,000 Dragon Clan members. Is that something that can be annihilated by one person? Someone beside him immediately questioned. The old man in his 60s shook his head slowly. Young man, you know nothing about strength. Logically speaking, it's impossible for anyone to do this. To annihilate all the Dragon Clan members in the Dragon Valley, it would require a very large team. The movement of such a large team is likely to attract attention. But until now, there have been no reports of such a team. This can only mean one thing: that team doesn't exist. So it can only be someone with heaven-defying strength who annihilated the entire dragon clan. When I passed by Hunting Island number 1, I saw a similar scene. All the creatures on the island were turned into blood-red powder. There was almost no life there. There was a base in the center of Hunting Island number 1. Out of curiosity, I went there to investigate. Although the people there didn't say much, it could be inferred from their words that they had a very powerful leader. It was their leader who destroyed the rest of the creatures on the first hunting island and brought them to the first hunting island. Everyone was surprised when they heard this. But I heard that there was a change in the first hunting island, and it was taken over by a group of newcomers. The leader of that group of rookies has such powerful strength? The old man shook his head. No one can say for sure. In short, I'm guessing that it's probably the new island master of Hunting Island number 1. In a small city at the border of the Cloud State, Han Jianxing was sitting on the grass, enjoying the scenery on the other side of the river, while drinking wine. At this moment, Han Lubai quickly walked over. Dad, the dragon clan has been exterminated. Han Jianxing was taken aback. In his eyes, the dragon clan was the most powerful force in the world. Even though he was known to be able to freeze 16 states with a single sword, he was still extremely insignificant in the face of the dragon clan. More than 50 years ago, he had made a trip to the dragon clan. At that time, he could feel that there were no less than 100 grand desolate masters in the dragon clan. How could such a powerful dragon clan be exterminated? It sounded like a joke. However, when he saw the aerial image of the Dragon Valley on Han Lubai's multifunction watch, he finally believed it. Dad, who do you think did it? Han Lubai asked. Han Jianxing pondered for a moment and replied, I can't think of anyone in this world. However, if I have to name one person, I guess it's only that kid, Immortal. Huh. Han Lubai opened her mouth in surprise and shook her head. Dad, when you said that he was the one who destroyed the Celestial Gold Trisect, I reluctantly believed you. But now you're saying that he was the one who destroyed the Dragon Clan. Isn't that too exaggerated? Even you, a level 2 Grand Desolate Master, can't do it. How could he do it? Han Jianxing said. On the surface, that guy's strength is only that of a Grand Desolate Master, but in battle he can often erupt with strength far stronger than a level 1 Grand Desolate Master. And he can transform into a dragon. Most importantly, he can summon a creature that is 1,000 meters long, and that creature's strength far exceeds his own. Han Lubai shook her head again. Even so, it's impossible to destroy the Dragon Clan. Han Jianxing nodded. It's indeed impossible. But a moment later, looking at the setting sun, he spoke again slowly. But nothing is impossible when it comes to this kid. Of course, only a few people could speculate that all this was done by Immortal. Most people didn't know who had destroyed the Dragon Clan. The internet was full of wild guesses. Some people even said that only a god could destroy the Dragon Clan. On the first hunting island, Immortal saw this on the internet and smiled faintly. He was actually called a god. This really surprised him. But speaking of god, he was indeed a god in the miniature world. But the miniature world was really too small. It would be interesting if he could upgrade the miniature world to a planet in the future. At the same time, with the improvement of his strength, he felt that the level of the Dragon Palace should also be upgraded. The Dragon Clan had so many Grand Desolate Masters. Although the other powerful forces on the continent weren't as strong as the Dragon Clan, each force should have a few Grand Desolate Masters. The base could only defend against attacks below the Grand Desolate Master level, which was obviously not enough. Thinking of this, Immortal said in his mind, System, sign in after destroying the Dragon Clan. The system's voice sounded. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Destroy the Pseudo-Dragon Clan. Sign in reward, Dragon Palace upgrade. Immortal nodded with a smile. As expected, the Dragon Palace could be upgraded again. It takes 48 hours to upgrade the Dragon Palace. During the upgrade, the defense system of the Dragon Palace cannot be activated. The warning system of the Dragon Palace cannot be activated. Do you want to upgrade? Immortal nodded. Upgrade. The next moment, a progress bar appeared in his mind. It showed. Upgrade progress 0%. In the next 2 days, Immortal was free. Every day, apart from eating and sleeping, he would accompany him around the island. At noon 2 days later, the progress bar in his mind finally reached 100%. Chapter 457. 2 days later at noon, the progress bar in Immortal's mind finally reached 100%. At the same time, a system notification appeared in his mind. Frowny face Dragon Palace successfully upgraded. Upgrade details. 1. Absolute defense. Dragon Palace can withstand any attack from a Grand Desolate Master below level 10, including a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. 2. Follow your heart. After this upgrade, Dragon Palace will be more convenient to move. As long as the Dragon King wills it, Dragon Palace will move to the desired location. 3. Refining platform. After this upgrade, Dragon Palace will have a new refining platform. Anyone below the Grand Desolate Master level would only need 10 days to become a Grand Desolate Master after entering the Desolate refining platform. Host cannot use it. Immortal slowly nodded his head as he read. Every one of them was very useful. Absolute defense. In the history of the Flaming Land, no one could invade Dragon Palace. Follow your heart. In the future, no matter where Dragon Palace is, it will be very convenient. The refining platform was even more useful. With the refining platform, Dragon Palace will be able to produce a Grand Desolate Master every 10 days. However, the last sentence in the brackets was a little hurtful. What did it mean that the host could not use it? Originally, he thought that with the refining platform, he could be promoted to Grand Desolate Master after 10 days. However, the host could not use it. What a scam! The system seemed to have felt Immortal's emotions and prompted in his mind frowny face. Although the host cannot use the refining platform, with the refining platform, the host's level can be linked to the number of Grand Desolate Masters produced by the refining platform. What does that mean? Immortal asked. The system replied frowny face. When the refining platform produces 10 Grand Desolate Masters, the host's level will automatically increase by 1. When 100 Grand Desolate Masters are produced, the host's level will increase by 1 and so on. Immortal thought for a while. Producing 1 Grand Desolate Master required 10 days. Producing 10 Grand Desolate Masters required 100 days. 1 level in 100 days was a little slow. If other people knew what Immortal was thinking, they would probably want to kick him to death. Normally, after becoming a Grand Desolate Master, they would need to train hard for 10 years, dozens of years, or even hundreds of years to increase by 1 level. You don't do anything, and you can increase by 1 level in 3 months. You think it's slow? Why don't you just go to heaven? Immortal suddenly had an idea and asked the system, "Can I move the Dragon Palace into the miniature world?" As long as he could move the Dragon Palace to the miniature world, everything there would be under his control. Time was not a problem at all. The system replied frowny face. In the miniature world, you are already an omnipotent god. Do you still need to shorten the time to increase your strength? If that's the case, then I can't. The system poured a bucket of cold water on Immortal. That won't do. The host can only use divine power to increase his strength in the miniature world, and cannot be forced into the real world. Immortal could not help but shake his head. The system had seen through it. Since he could not forcefully increase his strength, Immortal did not dwell on it. However, he secretly comforted himself that the increase in his strength was already very abnormal. Don't be too perverted and leave others a way out. As the saying goes, leave a way out for others so that we can meet again in the future. After that, Immortal followed the system's instructions and came to the center of the Dragon Palace. Sure enough, a stone platform had already appeared there. The stone platform was not tall, only about a foot tall. It was also not big, just enough for one person to sit on. Immortal carefully studied it for a while, but could not figure out what the stone platform was made of. He used Dragon's telekinesis to investigate and found nothing special about it. Following the principle of not thinking about things that he did not understand, Immortal immediately called Emma over. Emma had not seen Immortal for a long time. When she saw Immortal, there was a subtle gentleness in her eyes. Immortal did not notice this. She pointed at the black stone platform and said to Immortal, "Sit on it and see what changes will happen in 10 days." Emma glanced at her son beside her. Immortal naturally knew what she meant and said, "Don't worry, Happy will take care of your son for these 10 days." Emma was naturally not worried about Immortal, and she was not worried about Happy either. She nodded and sat on the platform. As soon as she sat on it, she felt a majestic energy enter her body from the stone platform. This energy came suddenly and was extremely majestic. She, who was unprepared, was almost unable to bear it. Fortunately, this energy seemed to be limited to a level that she could barely bear. In just a few minutes, the energy she absorbed was more than what she usually absorbed from desolate beasts in a month. Emma could not help but feel happy. Immortal said to her, "Calm your mind and start cultivating." Emma hurriedly nodded, "Yes." She then calmed her mind and began to exhale and inhale slowly. Immortal could also clearly feel Emma's aura rapidly increasing. Immortal said, "Don't come down during this period. You will know the result in 10 days. Emma was cultivating and did not have time to answer, but her eyebrows twitched slightly, indicating that she understood. Then Immortal called Happy over and told her to take care of Emma's son for the next 10 days. For the next 10 days, Immortal lived a leisurely and carefree life. With his current strength and the Azure Dragon clone, he was definitely a top-tier expert on the continent, even if he was not invincible. There was also nothing urgent to do. He did not need to seize the time to increase his strength like in the past. So he planned to stay in the Dragon Palace for a few more days to see the effects of the refining platform. 10 days was both slow and fast. Immortal did not seem to realize that 10 days had passed. In these 10 days, Emma had been cultivating on the refining platform. Immortal had already instructed that no one was allowed to approach the refining platform. The others did not know what Emma was doing, but they knew that Immortal's orders were imperial edicts. So in these 10 days, no one dared to approach the refining platform. Even the room where the refining platform was located was not approached by anyone. With Emma's current strength, it was completely possible for her to not eat or drink during cultivation. Naturally, she did not need to excrete. At noon, Immortal brought Emma's son to the refining platform. He opened the demonic dragon's eye and saw that Emma was still a 6th-level desolate hunter. But Emma's aura was much stronger than before. Judging by her aura, she had reached the peak of a 10th-level desolate hunter. Looking at the time, there were still more than 2 minutes to the 10 days. Immortal waited quietly. 2 minutes later, the aura on Emma's body rose again. In just 10 seconds, it was dozens of times stronger than before. This time, the aura rose very quickly and violently, but the time was very short. In just 5 seconds, it stopped. Chapter 458. Emma's aura was rising at an extremely fast speed. In just 5 seconds, it had increased by dozens of times. After 5 seconds, it stopped rising. It began to gradually stabilize. At this time, Immortal looked again with the mystic dragon's eye. Name Emma, race, blood clan, level 1 Great Desolate Master. Immortal was puzzled. Shouldn't it be a super evolved blood clan or a super evolved blood clan? The system's voice came frowny face all humanoid creatures, whether zombies, blood clan, werewolves, or zombies, after reaching the level of a Great Desolate Master. They are called Great Desolate Masters. Immortal nodded. It was easier to remember this. It saved him the trouble of having to calculate the level of a super evolved blood clan in his mind when he met one. Just like when he was learning English, when he encountered an English word, the meaning of the word didn't appear in his mind first. Instead, he had to translate it into Chinese first, and then he knew what the word meant. Troublesome. It was a lot easier to do this now. Emma opened her eyes at this time. She didn't pay attention to the changes in her body at first. Instead, she got off the refining platform and pulled her son over. She held her son's face to see if he had lost weight these days. Not only did her son not lose weight, he seemed to have gained a bit of weight. She stroked her son's head and said to Happy next to her, "Thank you." Happy shook his head and gestured. "Sister Emma, we're all family, you don't have to say this." Emma nodded, but her eyes were still filled with gratitude. For her, raising her strength to a great desolate master was not as important as taking care of her son for 10 days. After seeing that her son was fine, she noticed the change in her strength. She felt the aura in her body and the surging energy in her body. She looked at her hands in disbelief. Then she looked at Immortal. I was promoted to a great desolate master? Immortal smiled and nodded. Emma was even more in disbelief. While circulating the energy in her body, she said in surprise, 10 days? Immortal nodded again. Emma was even more surprised. Her strength was only equivalent to a level 6 desolate master. Now in just 10 days, she became a great desolate master. This was a little too exaggerated. But her surprise didn't last long. After all, in front of Immortal, even more ridiculous things had happened. Disregarding everything else, she suspected that the news of the Dragon Clan's annihilation that had spread throughout the continent in the past few days had something to do with Immortal. There were many experts in this world. There were also people stronger than Immortal. But who could destroy the entire Dragon Clan in a single night? Other than Immortal, she couldn't think of anyone else. Thank you, Master, Emma said gratefully. Immortal shook his head and said, call the little monk over. Emma immediately nodded and brought her son to find the little monk. After a while, he found the little monk. Although the little monk had followed Emma here, he kept shaking his head and mumbling to himself. This kind of algorithm, there's a problem. That's right, using the Sorgate's algorithm should be useful. Then he shook his head. That doesn't seem right either. It seemed that this guy had gone mad. As a desolate hunter, he did not care about cultivation at all. He only cared about mechas. But now that he had reached Immortal's level, he deeply understood that mechas were basically useless in battles between desolate hunters, especially grand desolate masters. He used to think that mechas were the future of the base. So he did not hesitate to spend a lot of time and energy to equip the base with a large number of mechas. But in battles between desolate hunters and above, mechas were basically live targets. Now mecha technology in the Flaming Land had reached a bottleneck. It was difficult to improve in a short period of time. Wasting time on mecha was not a rational thing to do. So, Immortal wanted to let the little monk get out of the mecha as soon as possible, and embark on the path of cultivation. Monk, sit on it and cultivate. Immortal pointed at the refining platform and said. Hearing this, the little monk shook his head like a baby. No, cultivating is too time-consuming. You must know that wasting time is equivalent to murdering for money. Boss, you're not really thinking of harming me, are you? Ba, you're too kind. Immortal laughed. With that little money of yours, is it worth it for me to scheme for you? Hearing this, the little monk had a look of disbelief. He tightened his collar and took 2 steps back. Boss, are you thinking of raping me? Immortal glared at him. Get lost. Okay. The little monk said and was about to leave. Immortal was speechless. Sit on it and cultivate for 10 days. Otherwise, you're not allowed to touch mechas anymore. Immortal's words had a hint of hidden meaning. Seeing this, the little monk was slightly stunned. Then he sat on it reluctantly, but there was still a look of pain between his brows. Obviously, in his opinion, sitting here and cultivating was too much of a waste of time. If he had the time, he might as well study mechas. But since his boss was angry, he did not dare to say anything more. In order to continue studying mechas in the future, he could only endure for now. Immortal was still afraid that the little monk would not be honest, so he said to Emma, watch him. Emma quickly nodded. Yes. Therefore, under Emma's strict supervision, the little monk did not dare to leave for the past 10 days. He could only cultivate there obediently. 10 days later, when Emma said time is up, the little monk could not wait to jump up. He planned to run back to his workshop and continue studying mechas. Not seeing mechas for 10 days was like not eating or drinking for 10 days. He was already unbearably thirsty. But when he jumped up, his body jumped up. Unexpectedly, his whole body crashed into the roof. He directly crashed through the roof. The little monk was so shocked that he kept shouting in the air. Ba, oh my god, ba, F***CK, 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 F***CK. After a while, he finally landed on the ground. He raised his hands and looked at them in astonishment. This is... Emma and the others also came out at this time. Emma's heart was also filled with shock. The little monk had also advanced to a Grand Desolate Master. One must know that the little monk was only a level 1 Desolate Master before. In just 10 days, he advanced to a level 1 Desolate Master. On average, he would advance by 1 level every day. This speed was simply unheard of. In her shock, Emma could not help but answer the little monk's question. You've advanced to a Grand Desolate Master. Ha! The little monk scratched his bald head in surprise. Big sister, you are not joking, right? In 10 days, I advanced by a whole realm? Let me tell you, if you lie, you will be going to hell. You have to think thrice before you speak, Ba. Emma laughed. Can't you feel it for yourself? The little monk nodded. You are right. Soon after, the energy in his body began to circulate. Chapter 459. When the small monk heard Emma's words, he tried to circulate the energy in his body. After doing so, he immediately shouted, F***CK. He felt that the energy in his body was unprecedentedly abundant. Not only was it abundant, it was even majestic. The energy in his body was like raging waves. Before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. After a moment, he felt that the aura in his body far exceeded that of a desolate hunter. He looked at himself in disbelief, then at Emma, and finally at Immortal. Boss, I became a Grand Desolate Master? Immortal smiled and said, Yes. The small monk was pleasantly surprised. F***CK so magical? He turned his head and looked at the black and unremarkable refining platform. Boss, this thing is so powerful. Immortal did not say anything else. Go and call Wuxia over. The small monk nodded. Yes, boss. After saying that, he quickly left. However, when he was about to walk out of the workshop, he suddenly thought of something. He turned his head and asked, Oh right, did I say F***CK just now? Immortal asked back. What do you think? The small monk had a face of regret. Sorry, master, I said vulgar words again. I deserve to be beaten. After saying that, he slapped his mouth twice and quickly turned around and left. Immortal and Happy looked at each other and smiled. This small monk was really a clown. However, with such a person by their side, their mood would be much better. Next, after another 10 days, Wuxia also successfully became a Grand Desolate Master. 3 Grand Desolate Masters in a month. This matter caused a huge commotion in the entire base. Sai, did you know? Mr. Mo has a magical platform. If you cultivate on it, you can become a Grand Desolate Master in 10 days. In this month, our base had 3 more Grand Desolate Masters. F***CK, are you serious? Grand Desolate Masters are the top existences in the continent. I heard that the other Grand Desolate Masters are basically old fellows who have cultivated for 300 to 500 years. You said that Mr. Mo can make a Grand Desolate Master in 10 days? That's too scary. Be careful with your words. What do you mean by Mr. Mo can make a Grand Desolate Master in 10 days? Does everyone have the chance to become a Grand Desolate Master? In the entire continent, there were only about 200 Grand Desolate Masters. Previously, when the dragon race was destroyed, more than 100 of them had died. Now of the billions of people in the base, there were less than 100 Grand Desolate Masters left. Now the base was able to produce 3 Grand Desolate Masters in a short month. How could these people not be excited? Of course, at the same time that this matter caused a huge commotion, Wuxia had already issued a death order. This matter was strictly prohibited from being spread. Those who violated the order would be killed, and their entire families would be sent back to Earth. Perhaps there were people who were not afraid of death, but sending their whole families back to Earth would make them afraid. After living here for more than 2 years, no one wanted to go back to Earth. Whether it was the level of technological development, or the strength of the people's cultivation physiques, it was far from what Earth could compare with. What was more, the Dragon Palace was right here. Cultivating in Dragon Palace was already much better than cultivating in the outside world. Now there was this black stone platform that could allow one to become a Grand Desolate Master within 10 days. In other words, as long as they were patient enough, everyone in their base would definitely be able to reach the Grand Desolate Master level. They had reached the pinnacle of the Flaming Dawn continent. It had to be known that after becoming a Grand Desolate Master, one's lifespan would exceed 500 years. And the higher the level of a Grand Desolate Master, the longer their lifespan would be. Who did not want to live for a few more hundred years? Therefore, they naturally would not be stupid enough to violate the order and spread this matter. Seeing that everything was more or less arranged, Immortal called Guojutao over. He said to Guojutao, "I have to go out for a period of time. Next, you will organize the people in the base to cultivate on the desolate refining platform. Everyone will cultivate for 10 days, and everyone will be able to become a Grand Desolate Master." When Guojutao heard Immortal's last sentence, his entire body trembled with excitement. Previously, everyone had guessed that everyone would be able to become a Grand Desolate Master if they cultivated on the platform. However, when it came from Immortal's mouth, it was a different matter. Think about it, if there were more than 50,000 people in the base, and every one of them was a Grand Desolate Master, what kind of scene would that be? Of course, if each person cultivated for 10 days, 50,000 people would need more than 500,000 days. That was more than 1,400 years. By that time, everyone here would be dead. However, this at least gave them hope. Furthermore, they had to plan properly and set up a reward system. Only those who performed well would be able to cultivate on the desolate refining platform. Then these people would definitely be motivated. This would be beneficial to the base's long-term development. Of course, there were some drawbacks in this, but as long as they planned properly, these drawbacks could be avoided. Furthermore, with Mr. Mo's ability, he might come up with something even more powerful in a few days. It could cultivate faster than the desolate refining platform. Then everyone would be able to become a Grand Desolate Master. Thinking of this, Guojutao nodded and said respectfully, "Mr. Mo, don't worry and go. I will arrange everything." When Immortal heard this, he scratched his head and said, "Your words sound weird." Guojutao also realized that something was wrong and hurriedly said, "What I mean is, Mr. Mo, don't worry and go. I will take care of everything here for you." Immortal shook his head and said, "It still doesn't feel right." Guojutao coughed dryly and said, "In short, Mr. Mo, don't worry." Immortal stroked his chin and nodded. "Yes, it will be fine this time." After Guojutao left, Immortal first put Happy into the micro-world. Now in the micro-world, Immortal was God. He changed this world according to his own wishes. In the sky, there were colorful phoenixes flying. The sun was the three-legged golden crow. A waterfall fell from the sky like the Milky Way. In the sky close to the ground, there were huge white cranes flying slowly. In the lake, there were colorful koi fish swimming. On the grass, there were flowers of different colors. If Happy got tired of these, he could change the world with just a thought. Most importantly, Immortal thought of something. Since he was in this world, he was a godlike existence. The rules of this world were set by him. Did that mean that he could make Happy speak? When he thought of this, his heart could not help but beat wildly. If that was the case, even if Happy could only speak in this world, he would still be very happy. When he thought of this, Immortal could not help but feel nervous. His nervousness stemmed from fear. He was afraid that in this world as a god, he would not be able to make Happy, who was a heaven speaker, speak. Therefore he was a little hesitant. After a while, a thought appeared in his mind. In this world, heaven's speaker could speak. Chapter 460. Luans and phoenixes flew in the sky. Mandarin ducks swam in the lake. Immortal was so nervous that his palms were sweating. He swallowed his saliva and his heart was beating wildly. He had seen many storms and waves. He could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. But at this moment he was extremely nervous. What if he failed? This was similar to a daring person confessing to someone. What if she didn't accept him? How would they get along in the future? After a while, Immortal gathered his courage and said, "Happy, try to speak." Happy was completely immersed in shock at this magical world. After hearing Emosher's words, she gestured with her hands. Brother Emo, this world is too magical. It's too beautiful. Emosher knew that Happy had misunderstood his meaning. This feeling was similar to being misunderstood as being a hooligan when he confessed. He hurriedly shook his head. No, what I mean is that you might be able to speak in this world. Happy was stunned. After a while she nodded. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She couldn't speak since she was born. Even if she could suddenly speak, she couldn't speak in an instant. Her lips opened and closed and opened again. After a full half a minute, she seemed to have gathered all the strength in her body and stuttered 3 words. Brother. Emo. Brother. At this moment, Emosher only felt a huge happiness suddenly and fiercely crashed into his heart. Then, it exploded in his heart and completely drowned him. He had thought countless times that Happy would be able to speak. He had also heard Happy call out Brother Emo countless times in his dreams. When Happy really said it, Emosher didn't dare to believe it. He couldn't help but swallow again and say it again. Emosher wasn't the only one who didn't dare to believe it. Happy also didn't dare to believe it. Ever since she was born, she had never opened her mouth to speak. She didn't expect that after more than 20 years, she could finally speak. Her lips opened and closed again. After a while, she said 3 words. Brother. Emo. This time, although she still stuttered, it was much smoother than the previous time. Happy's eyes were already filled with tears of happiness, and he was so excited that he could not stop crying. Emo. Big brother. Big brother Emo. Big brother Emo. Emosher nodded. Happy, you can speak now. She nodded happily. She was happy to have Emosher. With great difficulty he said, Happy. Very. Happy. Emosher couldn't help but have tears in his eyes. After a long time, the two of them finally let go of each other. Emosher immediately dismissed the idea of going to the 20th hunting island. He wanted to teach Happy how to speak in this world. He had never spoken before. Now that he had the ability to speak, he had to practice it slowly. Hence, for the next 5 days, Emosher and Happy stayed in Micro-World. The two of them spoke one after another. Usually, Emosher would say something, and Happy would follow suit, until the right words are said. 5 days later, Happy no longer had any problems in saying some simple sentences. Emosher said to Happy, My world is called Micro-World. It's equivalent to a world independent of the universe. In this world, your brother Emo is a god. In this world, I can make you speak. But in the outside world, you still can't speak. Happy shook his head. Brother Emo, I'm already very satisfied to be able to speak here. You don't have to worry about me anymore. Emosher nodded gently and pulled Happy over. He said, What I mean is, we can stay here often in the future. If you have anything to say to me, you can say it here. Happy nodded and said, Yes, brother Emo, I understand. After a while, Happy suddenly thought of something. Brother Emo, you can make me speak here. Can you make Sister Emma's son regain his normal intelligence? Emosher nodded. I can, but it's only limited to this world. Happy nodded and said, That's great. Even if it's only in this world, Sister Emma will be very happy. Hence, Happy returned to the real world and found Emma. He gestured with sign language. Sister Emma, you should know that Brother Emo has a miniature world. Emma nodded. I know, it's very beautiful. I really want to live there forever. Happy smiled and gestured. In that world, Brother Emo can make me speak. Emma was stunned. Then she said happily, Really? That's great. Let's go now. Let me see how you speak. Happy nodded and gestured again. And in that world, Brother Emo can make your son regain the intelligence of a normal human. Hearing this, Emma was stunned again. Then her heart burned. Really? Let's go now. She followed Emma and her son to Emosher's room. Emosher naturally knew about it. With a thought, the 4 of them entered the miniature world. When they appeared on the grass beside the lake, Emma looked at the dragons and phoenixes flying in the sky. Then, she looked at the various koi fish swimming in the water. Then, she looked at the huge waterfall that seemed to be hanging upside down from the heavenly palace. She couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Compared to the last time he was here, this place had undergone earth-shattering changes. But soon, her attention shifted from the changes in the environment to her son. She sized up her son carefully, then asked Immortal, "Boss, Just as she said this, her son suddenly said, "Mom." When Emma heard this word, her whole body trembled. She turned to look at her son, tears welling up in her eyes. How many years had it been since she heard her son call her mom? She didn't even have any hope of hearing her son call her mom again in her lifetime. She didn't expect that her son would be able to call her mom again. When her son saw Emma's tears, he wiped them away with his hand. "Mom, I'm fine. You don't have to worry." Emma's tears welled up again. She hugged her son. This was the scene that he had been yearning for day and night. When Happy saw this, a happy smile appeared on his face. After a long time, Emma let go of her son, turned around, and said to Immortal, "Boss, thank you." Immortal nodded slightly and said, "I always feel a bit awkward when I hear the word boss coming out of your mouth. Just call me Brother Emo." Emma nodded and said, "Brother Emo, thank you." Then, she bowed deeply to Immortal with her son. She was grateful to Immortal from the bottom of her heart. Happy, who was beside her, said, "Your son can only regain the intelligence of a normal person in this world, but in the outside world." Chapter 461. Happy said softly, "Sister Emma, your son can only be like this in this world. Back in the real world." She did not have the heart to finish her sentence. She felt that it was very cruel to say such words to a mother. However, Emma shook her head. "It's okay. I'm already very satisfied to be like this here." Speaking of this, she looked at Happy in surprise. "This is the first time I've heard you speak. I didn't expect your voice to be so nice." Happy smiled shyly and said, "Sister Emma, you're making me a little embarrassed." Immortal said, "If you like living here, you can stay here for a long time." Emma quickly nodded. "Thank you, OL. Brother Emo." Emma's son was also very sensible. "Thank you." Immortal shook his head. "No need to add, elder." Since Happy and Emma liked to stay here, Immortal decided to bring the three of them with him when he went out this time. At the very least, he would be able to eat a hot meal every time he brought them along. Moreover, there would be people to talk to when he was bored. After settling them down, Immortal set off for the 20th hunting island. Now he needed 1 million kill points to level up. Currently, he only had a little over 236,000 kill points. His goal for this trip to the 20th hunting ground was to obtain as many kill points as possible. Before he set off, he had done some research. In the 20th hunting ground, there were two types of creatures that were the most terrifying. One was the ghouls that mutated from humans after they were infected with the virus. The other was the mutated snakes. In the 20th hunting ground, normal humans only occupied 1/5 of the space. Ghouls and mutated snakes occupied the other 4/5 of the space. Ghouls lived on the rotting corpses of humans. Of course, they did not only eat rotting flesh and did not kill living humans. They would kill living humans and wait for them to rot before eating them. Moreover, these ghouls were very smart. They would not take the initiative to attack humans. Instead, they would often take advantage of the situation when humans were cornered by the mutated snakes. The strength of these snakes and ghouls was equivalent to that of a level 10 desolate hunter. It could be said that they were not a threat to Immortal at all. Moreover, the number of ghouls and snakes was very large. Immortal could easily kill a large number of them. Therefore, to ordinary desolate hunters, the 20th hunting ground, which was known as a forbidden zone, was the best place for Immortal to obtain kill points. The 20th hunting island was relatively far away. It took Immortal 2 days to reach the 20th hunting island. When they arrived at the business hall of hunting island number 20, Immortal probed with his dragon mind. He discovered that the people who came to the 20th hunting island were basically all rank 10 desolate hunters. Clearly, they were here to break through to the Grand Desolate Master level. However, as the 20th hunting ground was extremely dangerous, most of them came in groups. In groups of 3 to 5, each group was made up of level 10 Grand Desolate Masters from the same sect. The sects that could come here were basically the top sects in the entire Flaming Dawn continent. In addition to the business hall, there were also living areas, leisure areas, entertainment areas, and other areas on the 20th hunting island. In these areas, there were quite a few rank 10 hunters. Emosher probed with his dragon mind, and found that many of the desolate hunters were talking about the annihilation of the dragon clan. I wonder which super expert annihilated the dragon clan. It has been so many days, and there is no clue at all. Didn't anyone check it out? Are you kidding? To be able to annihilate the dragon clan, his strength is definitely at the top of the Flaming Dawn continent. Who would dare to investigate? Are they looking for death? That's true. If I had such strength, who would dare to get in my way? I would just annihilate them. The few people who were talking all had yearning expressions. Of course, there were also people who reminded him. The continent is not very peaceful recently. Everyone better behave on the continent. Yet if that super expert doesn't like it, it will be over. We have been very careful recently. As the second most powerful sect on the continent, the sect master has given a strict order that no disciple is allowed to provoke any person from any sect. Violators will be killed on the spot. Damn, isn't your sect too strict? Sai, we have no choice. The number 1 faction, the Dragon Clan, has been annihilated. As the number 2 faction, we are also very scared. As they spoke, a trace of fear appeared on their faces. Hearing these words, Emosher could not help but touch his chin. Am I that scary? Next, it was Emosher's turn to line up to buy a ticket. When Emosher went to the other hunting islands for the first time, he was afraid of exposing his identity, so he asked the little monk to get a ticket for him online. Now Emosher's strength could be said to be among the top of the Flaming Dawn continent. Naturally, he did not need to be afraid of exposing his identity. If he really exposed his identity, it would be these people who should be afraid. There were actually quite a lot of people going to the 20th hunting ground. After all, many people were stuck at rank 10. If they could break through to the Grand Desolate Master level, not only would their strength reach the level of a first-rate expert, but their lifespan would also be extended to 1,000 years. Naturally, all the desolate hunters who had hopes of breaking through to the Grand Desolate Master level would come to try. Emosher did not go to the self-service ticket vending machine to buy a ticket. This was because the automatic ticket vending machine only had 1 ticket per person. There were not many people lining up at the ticket window, so Emosher quickly arrived at the window. The beautiful ticket sales girl at the window had a professional smile on her face as she asked, "Hello. May I know how many people are there?" Emosher replied, "1 person." The ticket sales girl nodded with a smile and said, "1 ticket." Emosher smiled and shook his head. "No, I want to book a ticket for a year." The ticket sales girl was speechless. She was stunned. She had been selling tickets here for 3 years. She often saw experts who went to the 20th hunting ground for a month and came back without resting. They would buy another ticket and enter the 20th hunting ground again. However, she had never heard of someone who could book a ticket for a year. When the surrounding people saw this, although they did not say anything, they were laughing in their hearts. Could this be a country bumpkin from somewhere? Did he know how expensive the tickets were? 1 ticket cost 2 million. If he bought a ticket for a year, wouldn't it cost 24 million? Was he crazy? Moreover, money was secondary. The most important thing was that the 20th hunting ground was extremely dangerous for desolate hunters. There was a saying in the story, "Towering giant python." This showed how terrifying the mutated snakes were. Not to mention the ghouls, whose intelligence was about the same as humans. One had to be on tenterhooks after going there for a month. One had to be in a tense state at all times. Therefore, many people would have to rest for a long time after going there for a month. Now this kid actually wanted to book a ticket for a year. Was he crazy? Chapter 462. The pretty ticket seller was stunned when she heard Emosher say it was for a year. But with her professionalism, she quickly regained her professional smile. She said, "Sir, I have to remind you that the 20th hunting ground is very dangerous. According to the rules of our hunting island, each person can only buy 1 ticket. After a month, You have to come back and rest for a few days. Emosher shook his head. No need. I'm in a hurry. The pretty ticket seller continued. Each ticket costs 2 million, so you'll need 24 million a year. I suggest you. No need. Here's a check for 30 million from Yenshire Bank. You can withdraw cash from any bank. As Emosher spoke, he took out a check. He already knew that these people would make excuses, so it was more practical to pay directly. The surrounding people who had been secretly laughing just now all widened their eyes at this moment. Damn, 30 million just like that. Whose rich kid is this? His family has a mine, right? In fact, they were right. Emosher did have a mine on Hunting Island number 1. But his money did not come from the crystal source veins. It was what he got after he inherited Hunting Island number 1. And this was only a small part of all his assets. After he destroyed the Skygold Trisect and the Dragon Clan, he also got a large amount of electronic currency. Although these electronic currencies needed to be verified before they could be used, it was not difficult for the little monk to crack them. So now Emosher was definitely one of the richest people on the continent. Even Emosher himself did not know how much wealth he had now. Seeing this, the female ticket seller's beautiful eyes showed a hint of surprise. But she was still very professional. She regained her smile. She said politely, "Sir, I can't make the decision on this matter. Please wait in the VIP room for a while. I'll get the manager." Emosher nodded. Okay. Then he turned around and walked toward the VIP room. Seeing this, the people around all shook their heads helplessly. You can really do whatever you want with money. What rules? What rules? They're nothing in front of money. What can we do? If you have money, you can too. When Emosher arrived at the VIP lounge, someone had already brewed a cup of high-quality black tea. Before Emosher could savor it, the manager had already walked in. This was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was plump and looked simple and honest. As soon as he came in, his face was full of smiles. "Honorable sir, what is your name?" Emosher said. "Emo. Mr. Emo, we are honored to have you on our Hunting Island 20. Please have a seat. This is the best longer tea. Please have a taste." Emosher nodded. This manager looked simple and honest. Actually, it was very slippery. However, Emosher did not intend to have too much to do with him. He directly slapped out a check. 30 million for a year. The manager looked at the check in front of him with a smile. "Mr. Emo, you're so cool." The 20th Hunting Island has always been very straightforward with people who like to be straightforward. Sure. Emosher nodded. That's good. Let's go now. The manager was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Emosher to be so direct and efficient at handling matters at such a young age. Without the slightest hesitation, he quickly nodded. Of course. I'll prepare the VIP channel for you. Everyone else will be temporarily suspended. Only you will be teleported. This was a little too high profile. However, there were still many people who needed to be teleported. If Emosher followed the normal procedure, it would probably take more than an hour. Therefore, Emosher nodded and said, "Okay." The manager said, "Mr. Emo, please come with me." Then he led Emosher to the teleportation hall. When the people around saw that the manager of the 20th Hunting Island was personally escorting this guest, they all looked at each other. Sure enough, with money, even if you asked a ghost to grind it, the ghost would definitely agree. The plump manager turned back and asked while walking, "Mr. Emo, the 20th Hunting Island is very dangerous. Do you need us to send 2 Grand Desolate Masters to accompany you?" Emosher shook his head. "No need. Well, okay." While talking, the two arrived at the teleportation hall. The manager had already informed the people in front of the teleportation hall to temporarily suspend the teleportation. Of course, these people were basically disciples of the major sects on the continent. They could not be offended. Therefore, there was compensation for them. Each of them would be given a refund of 100,000 for the entrance fee. Most of these disciples were happy to have their money refunded. Although they were disciples of the major sects, their money did not grow on trees. How could they not be happy that they could save 100,000 yuan by waiting a little longer? Of course, there were also disciples of the major sects who did not lack money. Their faces were full of embarrassment. However, before they left, the elders in their sects had warned them that it was a critical time and they should not cause any trouble. Therefore, they could only endure it for the time being. After Emosher arrived at the teleportation hall, the teleportation was soon activated. He turned into a blue and white ball of light and disappeared from the teleportation hall under the envious and jealous gazes of the others. The manager secretly used his multifunctional watch to check the authenticity of the 30 million yuan check. In the end, he nodded in satisfaction. Then he smiled at the crowd and said, "Everyone, I'm really sorry. The guest just now had some urgent matters to attend to. I'm sorry for wasting everyone's time. When you come back from the 20th hunting ground in a month, your expenses will be waived for the next 3 days." Hearing that, everyone clapped and cheered. Although they did not care about the money, it was naturally good to spend less. The manager was overjoyed and went to report to the island master. He had made a lot of money today. The island master should be very happy. When the island master was happy, many things would be easy to handle. More than 10 minutes after Emosher left, the news of a person spending 30 million yuan for a year spread throughout the entire 20th hunting island. From the managers of the hunting island to the people who came here for training, everyone was amazed. 30 million? Damn, I can't earn that much even if I earn 10 lifetimes. A year's subscription? This is the first time I've heard of a year's subscription in the hunting ground. It seems that guy is not only rich, but also far stronger than ordinary people. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to book a year's subscription in the 20th hunting ground. At the same time, in the island master's office on the 20th hunting island, the island master was studying how to expand the 20th hunting island. The fat manager suddenly walked in excitedly and said, "Good news, island master." The island master retracted his gaze from the computer screen and looked up at the fat manager. "What's the good news?" The fat manager replied, "This morning our turnover exceeded 50 million. 50 million? It's twice as high as usual." The island master was slightly puzzled. In the past, it would be 30 million at most in half a day. How could it suddenly increase by so much? Chapter 463. The owner of the 20th hunting island was puzzled. How could the turnover have doubled all of a sudden? The plump manager replied, "It's a VIP 30 million for a year." The owner of the 20th hunting island was slightly surprised. "Who is it?" The plump manager replied, "A VIP with the surname Mo." The owner asked again, "Which faction does Chong belong to?" The plump manager shook his head. "I haven't had the time to check." The owner thought for a moment and said, "Check, but don't make too much noise. We have to be careful with such a person." The plump manager nodded. "Understood." With the power of the 20th hunting island, it didn't take too long to check a person's information. In just a few minutes, the information about Emosher had been sent to the plump manager's multifunction watch. He quickly opened the information and read it to the owner. Emosher, the new owner of the first hunting island. He slaughtered the entire 10th hunting island alone. He killed a member of the dragon clan in seconds and is suspected to have slaughtered the strongest sects in the 16 prefectures, the Heavenly Gold, Heavenly Wood, and Heavenly Water sects. The plump manager's voice became lower and lower as he read. Finally, he stopped. The owner's eyes widened. Some time ago, he heard that the 10th hunting island had been slaughtered, and it was by a single person. He didn't expect it to be this young man. According to the information, the 10th hunting island had invited no less than 100 hunters. This young man had killed so many desolate hunters by himself. Just how strong was he? The most shocking thing was that he killed a member of the Dragon Clan in seconds, even though he knew that there was a member of the Dragon Clan present. One had to know that the Dragon Clan was the strongest faction in the entire Flaming Land back then. He dared to slaughter the Dragon Clan in front of so many people. This matter was definitely not simple. A few days ago, the entire Dragon Clan had been slaughtered. Thinking of this, the owner seemed to have discovered a huge secret. This young man with the surname Mo was very likely to be a super expert who had slaughtered the entire Dragon Clan. Although this sounded ridiculous, nothing was impossible on the Flaming Dawn continent. Moreover, even if he wasn't the one who had slaughtered the Dragon Clan, the fact that he dared to kill a member of the Dragon Clan in seconds on the 10th hunting island was enough to prove that he was somehow related to the super expert who had slaughtered the entire Dragon Clan. Thinking of this, the island master asked the fat manager, "When you received this MO, island master just now, you didn't neglect anything, right?" Although he knew that the fat manager always did things flawlessly, he was still very confident in manager MO. However, this was a matter of great importance, so he had to confirm it again. The fat manager shook his head repeatedly. "Island master, don't worry. I've always been very polite to any guest, let alone this distinguished guest." After saying that, the fat manager's forehead was already covered in sweat. Although he had done a perfect job just now, he was dealing with a young man who was related to the Dragon Clan, the #1 force on the continent. If there was even the slightest negligence, just thinking about it made him scared. The fat manager wiped the sweat off his forehead without leaving a trace and asked, "Island Lord, should we remind the other people on the island to be careful when they meet Island Lord Mo?" The island master thought for a moment and shook his head. "That's not necessary. If there are too many traces of our involvement in this matter, I'm afraid it will arouse his displeasure. Let nature take its course." If an ordinary person heard the words "let nature take its course," they would probably be a little dumbfounded. What did it mean to let nature take its course? But who was the fat manager? Reading people's minds was his forte. He quickly understood the island master's meaning. In the face of such a powerful existence, anything one did would be in vain. It was better to let nature take its course, as long as one was careful and did not provoke him. As for the others, they could do whatever they wanted. At this moment, Mo sure had already arrived at the 20th hunting ground. The 20th hunting ground was called the Hell Python Planet. It got its name because there were many kinds of terrifying pythons on the planet. Generally speaking, the creator was fair. Poisonous snakes were not big in size, and the big pythons were basically not poisonous. However, on this planet, due to the deliberate control of the 20th hunting ground, the bigger the python, the more poisonous it was. Take the tax room as an example. The strongest python on this planet was a level 10 mutated wild beast, which was equivalent to a level 10 desolate hunter. However, due to the existence of extremely powerful toxins, their strength was far stronger than a level 10 desolate hunter. Therefore, even a level 10 desolate hunter could only retreat in the face of such a python. At this time, Mo sure was at the teleportation coordinates. These coordinates were not built in the wilderness. The Hell Python planet was too dangerous. Therefore, the 3 coordinates were all in 3 bases. These 3 bases were specially built on the 20th hunting ground. Around the bases, there were energy shields for defense, and there were all kinds of thermal weapons and super weapons for defense. Once those pythons and ghouls tried to attack the bases, they would be blasted into pieces by these thermal weapons. Of course, after so many years, these pythons and ghouls had learned to be smart. They would not attack these bases rashly. However, once someone came out of the bases, they would use all kinds of methods to kill them. The people who came here for training had not reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master. Therefore, their various abilities were not too outstanding. And those who had reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master would have made great progress in various aspects of their body. Speed, strength, explosive force, agility, and other aspects would be greatly improved. Therefore, it was not too dangerous for a Grand Desolate Master to go to the 21st or 22nd hunting ground. On the contrary, the 20th hunting ground was the most dangerous one. The annual mortality rate was among the top 30 hunting grounds. When Emosher walked out of the teleportation coordinates, a middle-aged woman immediately came up to him. Although she looked middle-aged on the surface, she did not make people feel that she was old at all. On the contrary, she made people feel that she was more feminine. Every move of hers could stir a man's heart. She had a friendly smile on her face and said to Emosher, "Mr. Emo, welcome, welcome." Emosher plundered her memory and checked it. It turned out that she was also a staff member of the 20th hunting ground. She received a message from the manager telling her to carry out her orders well. Emosher nodded. The woman introduced herself. My name is Wei. People here call me Sister Wei. Mr. Mo, you can call me by my name. Emosure looked at this woman. She was not so charming, nor so vulgar. But even if she flipped her long hair, it would make a man's heart beat. Of course, compared to happiness, she was not so beautiful and pure. Compared to Maya, her figure was not so hot. Therefore, Emosure did not say much. He just nodded. You are older than me. I'll call you Sister Wei. And Wei saw that Emosure was not surprised by her appearance, and was a little surprised. At the same time, she clutched her chest. Mr. Mo's words are a little hurtful. Chapter 464. Emosure was welcomed into the first base by Wei. The 3 bases on the Infernal Python Star had the best defensive facilities and living facilities in the Flaming Origin continent. The rank 10 Desolate Hunters who came to the Infernal Python Star to train would usually stay in the base. If they wanted to train, they would leave the base to hunt desolate beasts. Wei brought Emosure all the way into the living area. They then passed through the entertainment hall. Along the way, many people came to greet Wei. Hello, Sister Wei. Oh, Sister Wei, is this your brother? Sister Wei, are you free to have dinner with us tonight? Wei also warmly returned their greetings. However, although she was also very warm to others, she seemed very approachable. In fact, everyone knew that Wei was a woman who was very difficult to win over. Firstly, her strength had reached the level of a grand hunter. She looked down on these desolate hunters. Secondly, in this base, she was the absolute leader. Regardless of strength or status, she was higher than these desolate hunters who came out to train. If these people wanted to pursue her, it would naturally be very difficult. However, when Wei spoke to Emosure, that kind of feeling made people feel very intimate. Mr. Mo, this way please. Wei's face was brimming with a charming smile. Emosure nodded and followed her out of the entertainment hall. Everyone in the hall looked at the back of the 2 people as they left, and started to discuss in low voices. Who exactly is that kid? Is he Sister Wei's gigolo? Looking at that kid's appearance, I feel unhappy. Are you jealous? Ha ha ha. Aren't you jealous? Saying this seemed to poke at the sore spot of every man present. Damn, I just haven't reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master. If I had reached the level of a Grand Desolate Master, I would definitely pursue Sister Wei. Who wouldn't? Soon, Wei brought Emosure to a standalone room that looked like a villa. She introduced with a charming smile. This is a standalone villa that our base specially uses to entertain VIPs. Mr. Mo, you can rest assured that no one will disturb you here. If you need anything, there's a pager here. I will arrange for people to be on standby 24 hours a day. Emosure didn't act coquettishly. He nodded and said, Thank you, Sister Wei. Wei shook her head. You're our honored guest, and this is something we ought to do. Emosure thought for a moment before saying, Sister Wei, which part of the Infernal Python Star has the most ghouls and snakes? It would be best if they are at the Desolate Hunter level. Sister Wei said, The place with the most ghouls is the Ghoul Swamp. However, in terms of numbers, they were still no match for the Yama Forest. There were many snakes there. In the Yama Forest, there was a snake valley. It was a kingdom of snakes. Every snake had reached the level of a mutated desolate beast. They are equivalent to desolate hunters. Hearing this, Emosure was secretly delighted. Then he said to Sister Wei, Okay, I understand. Sister Wei asked, What's the matter? Is Mr. Mo thinking of going there? It's too dangerous there. I suggest that Mr. Mo doesn't go there. Emosure said, Well, thanks for the reminder. However, I have something important to do, so I have to go there. Wei said, If Mr. Mo insists on going, I can send a few people to go with you. Or, I can accompany you personally. That's the safest way. Emosure shook his head. There's no need. Hearing Emosure's words, Wei did not insist. She only said, Mr. Mo, you have to be careful. You have to prepare enough life-saving items. Emosure nodded. Okay. Wei saw that Emosure had no intention of continuing the conversation, but she tactfully said, Mr. Mo, you should rest early. Then you should rest early, Mr. Mo. If you need anything, just press the call button, and we'll get it done for you immediately. Emosure nodded again. Okay. And Wei left the room and returned to her office a few minutes later. After thinking for a moment, she called the island master. Island master, Mr. Mo wants to go to the Yama forest and even Snake Island. The island master was silent for a moment before asking, why is he going there? And Wei shook her head. I don't know either. However, that place is extremely dangerous. Even a grand desolate master has to be extremely careful. Mr. Mo might be in danger if he goes alone. I plan to send a few people to protect him, but he said there's no need. So, should we send someone to protect him in secret? The island master pondered for a moment before replying. He might be related to the person who slaughtered the dragon clan. He might be the person who slaughtered the dragon clan. Since he said there's no problem, we don't have to worry. If we interfere too much, we might arouse his displeasure. And Wei nodded when she heard this. Understood, I'll master. After ending the call, Wei recalled the island master's words and could not help but be shocked. That young man might be the person who slaughtered the dragon clan? The psychological impact of this news was too great. She needed some time to digest it. The next morning, Emosure slept until 11 o'clock before waking up. After he finished washing up, he pressed the beeper. Bring me breakfast. The other side immediately responded, yes, Mr. Mo. In less than a minute, 2 attendants had already walked in with a food delivery cart. The breakfast was very sumptuous, enough for 5 people. Emosure naturally did not stand on ceremony. He had spent 30 million for a year, so it was natural for them to prepare a sumptuous breakfast for him. As for Happy and Emma, Missouri sure did not let them come out. In the miniature world, Emosure had already prepared a lot of ingredients for them, so they could make it themselves. After finishing breakfast, Emosure flapped his wings and left the base. Those who saw Emosure leave were all slightly surprised. This guy is so arrogant. He actually went outside the base alone on this hell python star. He's not arrogant, he's just an idiot. He thinks he's very powerful, but he doesn't understand how terrifying this hell python star is. I say, in less than 10 minutes, this guy will either be scared back or die outside. It's best if he dies outside. While they were discussing, a few inconspicuous middle-aged men were sitting in the corner of the restaurant. One of them said, this is the only reason we came to the hell python star this time. Other than that, don't cause any more trouble. The others nodded. Understood. That person continued. There are many snake-type desolate beasts in the Yama forest. Everyone must be careful. Especially in the Snake Valley, it's extremely dangerous. So everyone must take protective measures. In short, now that the Dragon Clan has been destroyed, it's time for us to welcome the Phoenix Master back. When the others heard this, their eyes flashed with fanaticism as they said in low voices, welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Chapter 465. Infernal Python Planet. Base number 1, in the corner of the restaurant. A few people in ordinary clothes who didn't seem to attract any attention said in a low voice, welcome back Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. The leader said, have the other brothers arrived? We've divided into 5 groups. The first 3 groups have already set off for Yama Jungle. The other 2 groups have already arrived at Hunting Island 20. They'll be here soon. The leader nodded. Okay, let's go to Yama Jungle after we finish our meal. Yes. Emosure didn't use teleportation after leaving the base. It was his first time here, and he wanted to see what kind of world this was. After flying at subsonic speed for about 10 minutes, a shadow suddenly shot up from the forest below at an extremely fast speed. Fortunately, Emosure's dragons will happen to scan the area below, and caught the shadow instantly. He leaned to the side. Whoosh! That black shadow almost brushed past Emosure's chest as it flew past. At this time, Emosher already knew what the black shadow was. It was a feather more than a meter long, and the feather had energy attached to it. After Emosher dodged the feather, it flew up for about 2 kilometers before falling to the ground. When it landed, it actually nailed deeply into a huge rock that was about the height of a person on the ground with a cracking sound. Only the feather tail of more than a foot long was left outside. Emosher's dragons will immediately swept down. He found that it was a bird-type wild beast that attacked him. This bird-type wild beast was about 30 meters long and 15 meters wide. Its feathers were black. Only the hair on the top of its head was white. Emosher checked its level frowny face species. White-headed arrow eagle. Level 3 mutant wild beast. Emosher was a little puzzled. This kind of thing could actually attack humans. The strangest thing was that it could shoot its feathers out like arrows. At this time, the white-headed arrow eagle saw that its attack missed and didn't continue fighting. It turned around, flapped its wings, and flew southeast. Emosher sneered. "Do you think you can just leave after attacking me?" At the thought of this, his dragon will moved and blasted towards the white-headed arrow condor. Bang! The white-headed arrow eagle instantly exploded into a bloody mist. Emosher shook his head and ignored him, continuing to fly forward. However, after flying for about 2 minutes, another white-headed arrow eagle appeared in front of him. This time, the white-headed arrow eagle didn't shoot any feathers at him. Instead, it flapped its wings and kept squeaking. Emosher stopped. This white-headed arrow eagle seemed to have something on its mind. "What's the matter with a bird looking for me?" Puzzled, he used his mind to plunder the white-headed arrow condor's memories. After looking through its memories, Emosher finally understood what was going on. It turned out that the white-headed arrow eagle had a nest nearby, and now, a large number of ghouls were invading their lair. The adult white-headed arrow eagles had all fled. However, it was their breeding season, and there were many fledglings in their nests that had not yet learned how to fly. The adult white-headed arrow eagles could only return and fight with the ghouls. However, in terms of intelligence, these white-headed arrow eagles were far inferior to the ghouls. The white-headed arrow eagles suffered heavy casualties. As a result, these white-headed arrow eagles had no choice but to ask for help. Of course, under normal circumstances, they wouldn't ask for help from humans. However, they were helpless at this moment. Previously, the white-headed arrow eagle wanted to stop Emosher. However, they didn't know how to speak human language, so they could only use their feathers to shoot at Emosher. Then they deliberately led him in the direction of the white-headed arrow eagle's nest. However, they didn't expect that this human didn't chase after them at all. Instead, he directly used his mind power to crush the white-headed arrow eagle's body. The other white-headed arrow eagles also witnessed this. This gave them a glimmer of hope. This human was so powerful, he should be able to chase away those ghouls. That was why this white-headed arrow eagle risked its life to block in front of Emosher. If Emosher killed this white-headed arrow eagle, there would be a 3rd, 4th, and 10th white-headed arrow eagle blocking his path. Although they didn't speak the same language, they believed that through this series of strange actions, this human should understand that they must have something special to ask of him. They were very lucky that Emosher had the memory plunder skill. Otherwise, they might really have to sacrifice themselves one by one. They didn't know how many sacrifices they had to make before Emosher understood their intentions. At the same time, Emosher felt slightly apologetic. Just now, the white-headed arrow eagle had come to ask for help. In the end, he didn't understand what it meant and directly killed it. Emosher thought for a moment, and used his mind to communicate with the white-headed arrow eagle. "Let's go and save your children." The white-headed arrow eagle 100 meters away was originally in despair. It was certain that this human would definitely not understand what it meant. They had to continuously block this human to make him understand. Therefore, it was used as cannon fodder. However, at this moment, a thought suddenly appeared in its mind, giving it a fright. It almost forgot to flap its wings. Emosher used his mind to communicate with it. "Why are you still in a daze? If you wait any longer, I'm afraid your children will all die." As he spoke, he had already flapped his wings and flew in the direction of the white-headed arrow eagle's nest. The white-headed arrow eagle was stunned again. How did this human know the direction of their nest? However, at this moment, it didn't care about these things. It had to solve this crisis first. Then, the man and the bird quickly flew toward the cliff 50 kilometers away. At this moment, at the cliff 50 kilometers away, the cliff here was like the pages of a book, layer by layer. Many huge nests were built on each layer. This kind of terrain could not only shelter them from the wind and rain, but it was also very suitable for the fledglings to fly for the first time. Therefore, this was a very ideal place for the white-headed arrow eagles to build their nests. Therefore, every year during the breeding season, there would be thousands of white-headed arrow eagles to build their nests here. However, at this moment, on these 1,000-layer cliffs, there were ghouls crawling everywhere. They constantly climbed into these nests and twisted the necks of these white-headed arrow eagle fledglings. As for those adult white-headed arrow eagles, they constantly shot out feathers. Those ghouls were very agile. Most of them were able to dodge these feathers that were shot out. Only a very small portion of them would be hit by these feathers. However, these ghouls were like zombies. Even if they were hit by the feathers, as long as their heads weren't hit, they could still move freely. Moreover, many ghouls actually knew how to use bows and arrows. And their bows and arrows were imbued with the energy in their bodies, which would cause serious damage to these white-headed arrow eagles. Just like this, both sides continued to fight with arrows. However, relatively speaking, the ghouls' intelligence was equivalent to that of humans. Therefore, the white-headed arrow eagles with lower intelligence were completely suppressed. Chapter 466. At this moment, the battle on the 1,000-level cliff had reached its climax. Of course, this was just a nicer way of putting it. To put it bluntly, it was actually a one-sided massacre of the white-headed arrow eagles by the ghouls. As long as the white-headed arrow eagles didn't hit the ghouls' heads, these ghouls could quickly recover in a short period of time. On the other hand, the arrows of these ghouls didn't all have energy, but also corpse poison. The energy was used to break through the defense, and as long as the corpse poison touched a little, it would turn into rotten flesh in a short period of time. When the white-headed arrow eagles were in the air, they only relied on a pair of wings, so they naturally weren't that agile in dodging. Therefore, at this moment, 600 to 700 white-headed arrow eagles had already been killed. Immortal had already flown to the top of the cliff. With a sweep of his dragon's consciousness, he discovered that there were more than 30,000 ghouls on the cliff below. These ghouls looked a little like humans, but their skin was gray. Each of them was very thin, almost like skin wrapped around bones. The eyeballs on their faces were very large, almost occupying a third of their faces. Each ghoul was basically a level 4 desolate hunter. At this moment, some ghouls pulled the white-headed arrow eagle's chicks out of the nest and opened their mouths to bite. Some ghouls used long vines to pierce through the bodies of the white-headed arrow eagle's chicks one after another, as if they were wearing a long stick of candied haws. Some of the white-headed arrow eagle's eggs that hadn't hatched yet were knocked open by the ghouls from the outside. Then, they sucked the juice inside from this hole. The white-headed arrow eagle that brought Immortal back screamed miserably when it saw this miserable situation. The rest of the white-headed arrow eagles saw that the reinforcements were only one person, and a human at that. Their hearts were filled with despair. Humans had always been at odds with desolate beasts like them. Basically, when they met, they would kill the other party. This time they actually brought back a human reinforcements. This was simply too stupid. Immortal didn't care about what these white-headed arrow eagles were thinking. He only wanted to collect kill points now. However, he had always been a person who would test the situation before doing anything. Therefore, he didn't directly make a move. Instead, he plundered the memories of a ghoul and checked them. He discovered that in addition to the 30,000 ghouls here, there were also a large number of ghouls in the will-o-wisp swamp not far away. Immortal couldn't help but feel happy in his heart. Then, the dragons will swept across the area. A ghoul that had just caught the white-headed arrow eagle exploded into a bloody mist with a bang. This gave the ghoul beside him a fright. But the ghoul hadn't reacted yet. Bang. He also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Bang 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 bang. The ghouls exploded one after another. Above the 1,000-layer broken cliff, blood mist suddenly rose. The ghouls were scared stiff by this sudden and bizarre scene. When they saw their fellow clansmen exploding one after another, their hearts were filled with fear. They no longer dared to stop. They either fled in all directions or hid. However, these were of no use in front of Emosher's dragon will. Some were hiding behind trees. Bang. Some of them were hiding in caves. Bang. How many of them managed to escape more than 1,000 meters away? Bang. How many managed to escape more than 10,000 meters away? Bang. Some even jumped into the river below the cliff, hiding deep in the mud. Bang. A blood-red wave burst out of the river. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact it happened in a short 10 seconds. The bodies of the ghouls, without exception, all exploded into a cloud of blood mist. More than 30,000 ghouls caused Emosher's kill points to soar by 30,000. This was also something that happened in a short 10 seconds. Seeing the kill points in his mind soar, this feeling of exploding made Emosher's heart beat faster. At this time his kill points had already reached 264338. As long as he went to the Will-O-Wisp swamp and killed the remaining 100,000 or so ghouls, he would be able to increase his kill points by another 100,000 or so. At this time, the white-headed Arrow Eagle's followers, who had been in despair, were stunned for a moment when they saw the scene in front of them. After coming back to their senses, they immediately became excited. The frequency of flapping their wings was much faster than before. They were saved. Their children were saved. And the person who saved them and their children was actually a human. This was really unbelievable to them. One had to know that when they met humans in the past, they either avoided each other from afar or fought a bloody battle. Who would have thought that one day, a human would actually save them from the danger of extinction? This time, they had sent out more than 100 of their kind to ask for help. Basically, these same kind of people had all gone to ask for help from other mutated desolate beasts. But these same kind of people either went and did not return, or they returned in failure. But they did not expect that in the end. It was actually these same kind of people who usually looked a little stupid, who found this human and saved their entire race. This was really out of their expectations. However, while these white-headed Arrow Eagles were surprised and grateful, Emosher was considering whether to kill these white-headed Arrow Eagles as well. After all, this was also a few hundred kill points. However, after thinking for a moment, Emosher still gave up on this plan. If there was really no other way to obtain kill points, he would naturally kill these white-headed Arrow Eagles. But now on this planet, there was a large amount of kill points for him to extract. With such a small amount of kill points, let's forget about it for now. These adult white-headed Arrow Eagles returned to their nests one after another. After checking on the chicks, they flapped their wings and flew up. They lined up neatly in the sky. 1 in the first row, 2 in the second row, 3 in the third row. Then, almost at the same time they chirped. Ah! More than 300 white-headed Arrow Eagles, whose bodies were more than 30 meters long, chirped at the same time. The scene was quite spectacular. This was the highest form of etiquette for them to express their gratitude. But this spectacular scene, compared to the 6 adult white-headed Arrow Eagles' corpses and the hundreds of chicks' corpses on the ground, seemed a little tragic. Emosher knew from their memories that this was their etiquette. He nodded and did not say anything else. A pair of wings condensed from energy flapped and flew in the direction of the smoke and fire swamp. Behind him, more than 300 white-headed Arrow Eagles chirped at the same time. Ah! More than 10 minutes after Emosher left, in a nest in the middle of the 1,000-layer broken cliff, a small white-headed Arrow Eagle broke out of its shell. But its appearance was different from ordinary white-headed Arrow Eagles. On its head, there was a feather sticking up high. When its parents saw this white-headed Arrow Eagle, they could not help but be stunned. Then they suddenly chirped at the sky. Ah! When the rest of the white-headed Arrow Eagles heard this chirp, they were all stunned. Then they hurriedly flew to this nest. When they saw this newly born white-headed Arrow Eagle, they all chirped at the sky, just like its parents. Ah! Chapter 467. Emosher didn't know what was happening behind him, because he put all his attention on the Will-O-Wisp swamp in front of him. According to the memories of the previous ghoul, there were more than 100,000 ghouls in the Will-O-Wisp swamp. Although these ghouls were only equivalent to a level 4 desolate hunter. But after all, it was an unfamiliar place, so Emoshar was still very careful. At this time, the sun was setting in the west, and the sky was gradually getting dark. In the dark swamp, faint green will-o-wisps had already appeared. This was very common in the will-o-wisp swamp. This was also the reason why the will-o-wisp swamp was so named. In the middle of the night, seeing these green the wisps would make one's hair stand on end. But Emoshar used his dragon's will to investigate, and found out the truth of these will-o-wisps. It turned out that these were just the eyes of the ghouls. But the strange thing was that the eyes of the ghouls in other places didn't emit a faint green light at night. Only the ghouls in the will-o-wisp swamp would emit this faint green light at night. So there must be something strange about this. But for so many years, not many people went to the will-o-wisp swamp to investigate. In the past 1,000 years, there were a few desolate masters who went to investigate. However, most of them never returned. And the only desolate master who came back not only didn't find anything, but after he came back, he slowly began to go crazy. He first began to believe in the existence of God. Then he said that everything in the world was under the control of God. Finally, he slowly began to become depressed. In the end, he ended his life by committing suicide. The owner of the 20th hunting island, as the owner of this planet, should have figured out the truth of the will-o-wisp swamp. But even the desolate masters couldn't return safely from the will-o-wisp swamp, so they naturally didn't dare to investigate. And as long as they didn't go to the will-o-wisp swamp, other places were actually very normal. So later, the 20th hunting island would give everyone who came to experience a special warning. Don't go to the will-o-wisp swamp. Emoshar was naturally told about this. But it was a bit unreasonable to leave so many kill points and not take them. And after evolving into a demonic dragon, the adventurous genes in his genes kept urging him to go to the will-o-wisp swamp. Emoshar decided to go and take a look. Most importantly, he had the miniature world. When he encountered danger that he couldn't avoid, he would directly hide in the miniature world. If hiding for a day wasn't enough, then he would hide for a year. If 1 year was not enough, then he would hide for 10 years. No matter how strong the enemy was, they were still people of this universe. It was impossible for it to affect his miniature world. Soon, Emoshar entered the Ghostfire Swamp. The Will-O-Wisp Swamp was extremely large. Although it was said that there were over 100,000 ghouls, they were actually spread out over 100,000 square kilometers of swamp. On average, there was only 1 ghoul per square kilometer. Emoshar activated his dragon will, and enveloped an area with a radius of 500 kilometers. The closer his dragon will was, the more powerful it would be. Therefore, although the dragon will could detect everything within a radius of 500 kilometers, the dragon will could not detect anything within a radius of 500 kilometers. However, if he wanted to use dragon telekinesis to kill an enemy, it would be best if he was within 100 kilometers. At this moment, in a circle with a radius of half a kilometer, under the heavy pressure of Emoshar's dragon will, bang 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 bang. The ghouls exploded one after another. Bang 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 bang. The ghouls exploded, and the ghost fire disappeared. In just 10 seconds, more than 300 ghouls exploded in a circular area with a radius of half a kilometer. Emoshar also obtained more than 300 killing points. As he continued to fly forward, ghouls continued to explode. In his mind, killing points continued to enter his account. At the same time, Emoshar already knew why so many people had left the Ghostfire Swamp and never returned. It turned out that there was corpse poison in the air of the Ghostfire Swamp. Generally speaking, corpse poison was like the zombie virus. It would not spread through the air. Only when one was scratched or bitten by the ghouls would they be infected. However, the corpse poison in the air here was extremely dense. If one accidentally inhaled it into their body, they would definitely be infected. It seemed that many people had died under this corpse poison. However, if that was all, it was still unable to kill the Grand Desolate Master. The Grand Desolate Master who had come to investigate also never returned. Obviously, there were other reasons for this. Emoshar's flying speed was not fast. He maintained an altitude of 100 meters. While using his dragon will to explore a radius of 500 kilometers, he also killed the ghouls within a radius of 100 kilometers. After flying for about half an hour, 2 ghouls jumped out in front of him. These 2 ghouls were already equivalent to level 5 desolate hunters, 1 level higher than the other ghouls. However, this was of no help at all. Immortal first plundered their memories before killing them. While flipping through their memories, he continued to fly forward. From the memories of these 2 ghouls, Immortal did not know what was strange about this swamp. However, from their memories, Immortal could vaguely feel a mysterious and powerful force that was dominating the entire Ghostfire swamp. He could even feel that there was a pair of eyes that had been watching the Ghostfire swamp in the dark night. If it was in the past, Immortal might have left the Ghostfire swamp. Safety was the most important thing. But now, with the adventurous nature of the bloodthirsty demon dragon in his body, coupled with the natural pride of the dragon race, this made him have no intention of leaving at all. You plan to dominate me? If you have the ability, bring it on. Continuing to fly forward, Immortal was still killing the ghouls here. Naturally, some ghouls saw Immortal and wanted to shoot Immortal down with arrows. However, before they could raise their arrows, they were already killed by Immortal. After flying for most of the night, he had killed about 20,000 ghouls. Immortal was also a little tired. With a thought, he hid in his own miniature world. When Happy and Emma saw Immortal arrive, they were very happy and asked about his well-being. Immortal said, "I'm a little tired. I want to rest." Happy and Emma quickly made a bed for Immortal. Immortal lay on the bed and heard the cries of dragons and phoenixes coming from the sky from time to time. Such sounds were a little disturbing to his sleep. With a thought, the sound of rain hitting banana leaves. Soon, a dark cloud appeared in the sky. At the same time, banana leaves quickly grew out of the empty space next to his bedroom. Soon the banana leaf reached his window. Patter, patter, raindrops fell. A fragrant smell of earth came from outside the window. Listening to the sound of rain hitting banana leaves, and smelling the fresh smell of earth. In a few minutes, Immortal's voice rang out. Happy and Emma heard the snoring coming from the bedroom, and could not help but look at each other and laugh. Emma's child could not help but laugh when he heard Immortal's voice. His snoring is really loud. Chapter 468. Immortal fell asleep amidst the sound of rain pattering on banana leaves. He woke up amidst the rainbow that stretched across the sky. Such a world, such a life, was really addictive. However, Immortal knew that life in this world was not real life after all. It was like playing a game. No matter how awesome one was in the game world, one still had to starve and be scolded in the real world. No matter how much this miniature world evolved, Immortal still had to constantly improve his strength in the real world. Although his sea dragon clone's strength was now considered a top-tier expert on the Flaming Origin continent. But this was not enough. Who knew if there were any hidden experts on the Flaming Origin continent? What Immortal wanted was to be able to crush the entire continent. Therefore, he had to raise his strength to the Grand Desolate Master level. At that time, the sea dragon clone's strength would exceed the Grand Desolate Master level. Only then could it be called invincible on the entire continent. Thinking of this, Immortal once again bid farewell to Happy Emma, and left the miniature world. When he came to the Ghostfire swamp again, it was morning. It was equivalent to Immortal sleeping for more than 30 hours. The ghouls were not afraid of sunlight. Therefore, they would still be active during the day. Immortal's draconic will probed. There were still many ghouls within a 500-kilometer radius. As for how terrifying the legendary Ghostfire swamp was, he did not discover it. He continued to go deeper and deeper, at the same time using his spiritual will to kill these ghouls. Just like this, Immortal continued to use his draconic will to kill the ghouls. When his draconic will was about to be exhausted, he returned to the miniature world to rest. After his draconic will recovered, he came out again to kill the ghouls. Now that Immortal's draconic will had reached level 10, its recovery speed was very fast. Basically, it would be able to recover to its peak within 48 hours. It seemed that no matter how one looked at it, Emosher would be able to easily cross the ghost fire swamp. However, on this day, when Emosher arrived at the center of the ghost fire swamp, he finally discovered something. The center of the ghost fire swamp, in terms of terrain, vegetation, and other aspects, seemed to be no different from the rest of the ghost fire swamp. But when Emosher arrived, he realized that something was wrong. The direction of the wind here was uncertain. Sometimes it blew from the southeast, sometimes it blew from the northwest. From time to time, there would be a tornado. Sometimes the wind even blew from the sky to the ground. Emosher had experienced so much, so he could be considered to be experienced and knowledgeable. However, he had never seen wind blowing from the sky to the ground. Emosher couldn't help but raise his guard. 5 minutes later, something strange happened. He saw an inverted cone-shaped tornado coming from afar. It was approaching at a high speed. The tornado swept up the turf and muddy water in the swamp. Wherever the tornado passed, it left a 100-meter wide and 1-meter deep gully in the swamp. Moments later, the tornado headed straight for Emosher. Emosher was already prepared to dodge. However, when the tornado was about 10 meters away from Emosher, it suddenly split into 4. It formed 4 tornadoes. The 4 tornadoes instantly spread out and surrounded Emosher from 4 directions. Emosher flapped his wings and passed through the side of the tornado at an extremely fast speed. However, just as he passed through, more than 10 tentacles stretched out from the tornado and grabbed at Emosher's feet. Fortunately, Emosher used his dragon sense to envelop the surroundings. When those tentacles reached over, Emosher had already dodged. The 4 tornadoes failed to encircle Emosher, so they merged back into one. Then they flew high into the sky. Moments later, from the sky, a huge tornado-shaped cover was formed and covered Emosher. At this moment, at the top of the tornado, where it met the sky, it formed the shadow of a giant. This giant shadow seemed to be the shadow of a corpse ghost. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, its face sinister. It seemed to want to eat Emosher alive. Especially the aura it released. It actually far exceeded that of a grand desolate master. It gave people the feeling that it was in existence above the grand desolate master. Moreover, this thing's body was still growing. At first, it was only 500 meters tall, but soon it reached 1,000 meters. 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 50,000 meters. It gave people the feeling that it had reached the level of connecting the sky and the earth. Even the most powerful Grand Desolate Master among humans would lose the thought of resisting in front of such a huge corpse ghost, because it was too powerful. However, at this moment, Emosher's mind moved. He directly used teleportation. He instantly left the range of the giant corpse ghost. The corpse ghost seemed to be slightly surprised. It let out a beast-like voice. Teleportation? Then it mocked. Do you think you're invincible just because you know a little triangular cat trick? Ignorant human, ha 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 ha. As it spoke, it stretched out its hands. I'll let you see what the power of a god is. Just as he finished speaking, he saw the swamp in the distance start to surge rapidly. Just like a wave, it was rolling towards them. At first, it was only 10 meters high. Gradually, the wave also continued to rise. 20 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters. It was still rising. What was even more terrifying was that there were actually 4 such waves. They swept towards Emosher from 4 directions. In the sky, the corpse ghost that was far larger than a mountain enveloped Emosher. If it was an ordinary person, even a grand desolate master, seeing this seemingly supernatural phenomenon, they would be scared to the point of being at a loss. In the flaming beginning continent, no matter how strong a grand desolate master was, he could split open the ground and collapse mountains. It wouldn't cause too much shock. Because for a grand desolate master, this was a routine operation. And now, this giant corpse ghost actually caused a 100-meter-tall wave of mud to surge in the swamp. This ability had far exceeded the ability of humans. It was normal for people to be afraid in front of such an ability. But Emosher didn't. This time, not only did he not escape, but he also flew towards the giant corpse ghost in the sky. At the same time, a long spear had already condensed in his right hand. The long spear was completely blood red. It was the demon-devouring dragon spear condensed from the blood of the corpse ghosts that Immortal had killed earlier. The dragon spear was 5 meters long. Immortal held the long spear in his hand, and directly pierced towards the giant palm of the giant corpse ghost in the sky. The corpse ghost once again let out a human laugh. A mere ant wants to shake a tree? Ridiculous. As it spoke, a large cluster of dark clouds suddenly floated over in the sky, blocking the light of the sun. In just a few seconds, the clear sky suddenly became covered with dark clouds. Then heavy rain poured down. Chapter 469. The originally cloudless sky was suddenly covered in dark clouds. Following that, heavy rain poured down. From the appearance of the dark clouds to the heavy rain. In just a short 5 seconds. This completely violated the laws of nature. At the same time, in the heavy rain, thousands of mud monkeys jumped out from the 4 mud waterfalls around them. These mud monkeys were not solid, but condensed from mud. Tens of thousands of mud monkeys swarmed towards Immortal, covering the sky and covering the earth. At this time, even a Grand Desolate Master would probably have a mental breakdown. This was because no matter how strong a spirit reader was, they would not be able to condense mud into other shapes, not to mention that these mud monkeys could attack. The most terrifying thing was that the aura of each mud monkey had reached the Grand Desolate Master realm. Tens of thousands of Grand Desolate Masters attacked one person. Even if this person was a super expert on the continent, a level 5 Grand Desolate Master. At this moment he would probably be scared. However, Immortal did not pay attention to those mud monkeys at all. He held the demon-devouring dragon spear tightly in his hand, and continued to stab towards the right palm of the giant corpse ghost in the sky. At this moment, the tens of thousands of mud monkeys had already surrounded Immortal. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced towards Immortal. However, what was surprising was that Immortal did not pay attention to them at all. When these mud monkeys bit Immortal, they could not even bite through Immortal's skin. At the same time, Immortal's demon-devouring dragon spear had already clashed with the giant palm of the giant corpse ghost. That giant palm was instantly sent flying under the demon-devouring dragon spear. Immortal and his spear pierced through the giant palm that covered a radius of more than 10 kilometers. They continued to go deeper, and pierced into the giant corpse ghost's forearm. Then they went forward until they reached its shoulder. Finally, they reached its chest. Puff! A muffled sound of flesh being pierced could be heard. It turned out that there was another corpse ghost hidden in the giant corpse ghost's chest. Immortal's demon-devouring dragon spear had pierced into the corpse ghost's body. The corpse ghost immediately let out a miserable scream, and its body instantly scattered as it fled. Blood was gushing out of its chest. At the same time, the body of the giant ghoul instantly turned into a large amount of mud and fell from the sky. As for the tens of thousands of mud monkeys in the surroundings, they also turned into mud and fell from the sky. The 4 huge waves formed by the muddy water also fell from the sky. The dense dark clouds in the sky also quickly receded. Immortal had just plundered the ghoul's memories and knew that it was the ghoul's doing. This ghoul had mutated and gained the wind attribute. Through constant practice, it could perfectly control the wind. For example, using wind to blow mud and water to condense huge waves, condense thousands of monkeys, or condense giants that reached the sky and touched the earth. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky were also caused by it controlling the wind. All of this seemed very frightening, especially after it raised the aura of these mud monkeys to the Grand Desolate Master level. It became even more frightening. Anyone who saw it would feel fear. On top of that, the ghoul was constantly using language to give psychological hints to the enemy. Therefore, when many humans saw this, they would feel that this was the power of a god. In front of such power, they didn't even have the chance to escape. This was also the reason why the Grand Desolate Master who escaped said that there really was a god in this world. As for the other Grand Desolate Masters who died here, it was because they had been here for too long and had inhaled too much corpse poison. They thought that they were strong and weren't afraid of inhaling such a small amount of corpse poison. But they didn't know that as time passed, it was like boiling a frog in warm water. In the end, Very few Grand Desolate Masters were able to return. As for Emosure, he had a physique that was immune to poison, so he naturally wasn't afraid of this corpse poison. Moreover, when he used the Devil Dragon's Eye to observe just now, he could easily see the true face of all of this. He knew that the Wind Attribute Ghoul was behind all of this. Therefore, the moment he attacked, he went straight for the Wind Attribute Ghoul. The Wind Attribute Ghoul was heavily injured, so everything it controlled naturally no longer existed. However, what made Emosure a little regretful was that when his devil-devouring dragon spear was about to pierce the ghoul's head, it still used a wind attribute technique to cause the tip of his spear to deviate from its target. Only then did it injure its shoulder. However, this was the devil-devouring dragon spear. Even if it only injured its shoulder, it would still be enough to make it suffer. However, in reality, this wind attribute ghoul recovered very quickly. After the wind attribute ghoul escaped with its injuries, Emosure continued to use his dragon sense to kill these ghouls. However, after a short 10 minutes, the wind attribute ghoul appeared again. This time, it didn't pretend to be a ghost. Instead, it suddenly appeared behind Emosure and clawed at Emosure's back with its sharp claws. Emosure dodged and dodged the ghoul. When he turned around to attack it, it quickly flew into the distance. Its speed was so fast that it surpassed any infected creature Emosure had ever seen. Moreover, when Emosure tried to attack it with his dragon sense, he found that it seemed to be invisible. His dragon sense couldn't attack it at all. Emosure frowned slightly. This guy was a little difficult to deal with. Although in terms of level, it was only equivalent to a level 7 Desolate Hunter, it was still a little troublesome to kill it. However, Emosure's purpose here was to collect kill points. As for this guy, it didn't matter if he killed it or not, as long as it didn't bother him anymore. However, this guy clearly had no intention of giving up. It knew that it couldn't defeat Emosure head-on, so it often turned invisible in the wind and slowly approached Emosure. Then it would suddenly launch a fatal blow. Emosure had his dragon sense enveloping the surroundings and was always vigilant, so he wasn't afraid of this. However, this was really annoying. It continuously harassed Emosure for half an hour. Even Emosure was slightly angry. This guy still didn't hold back. Although it couldn't kill Emosure, Emosure couldn't kill it either. And it could constantly provoke Emosure's bottom line through words. Emosure had no choice but to use his mind. With a teleport, he moved hundreds of kilometers away. However, just as he appeared, the wind attribute ghoul also appeared. Emosure teleported again, but the wind attribute ghoul followed him and teleported over again. It looked at Emosure with a despicable expression and chuckled. It's useless. Don't struggle. This is my world, and I am the god here. No matter where you run, I can catch up. So you'd better surrender. Emosure's heart was filled with anger. However, after hearing his words, his head moved slightly and he asked coldly, "No matter where I go, you can catch up?" The wind attribute ghoul looked smug. It crossed its arms in front of its chest. "Of course." Emosure asked again, "What if I go to another world?" Chapter 470. The wind attribute ghoul faced Emosure with a mocking smile and looked at Emosure. It spoke in a human voice. "You are very strong. You are the strongest human I have ever seen. Although your aura is only that of a level 5 Grand Desolate Master, you are much stronger than those Grand Desolate Masters. But so what? My wind attribute is formless, and ever-changing. You can't kill me, nor can you avoid me. I can't beat you, but I will annoy you to death. You can teleport? Sorry, I can too. Furthermore, I can track your aura. Wherever you teleport to, I'll teleport there too. If you go to the sky, I can go to the sky too. If you go to the ground, I can go to the ground too. Hee, so today either you die or you go crazy. Ha 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 ha. The ghoul's laughter sounded ethereal, sometimes far and sometimes close. If an ordinary person saw the ghoul's godlike ability and heard its words, even if they didn't collapse, they wouldn't be far from it. However, Emosure smiled faintly. He asked calmly, "What if I go to another world?" Hearing this, the ghoul laughed. "I will go to that world with you." Then he continued to tease. I have been to the other world you mentioned. There was once a grand desolate master of the blood world who was frightened by me and teleported back to the blood world. I followed his aura and instantly followed him to the blood world. In the end, I killed the grand desolate master in front of the tens of thousands of vampires in the blood world. What could they do? They could only watch, ha 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 ha. At this point, the mutated ghoul's laughter was filled with pride. The blood world was a place that even the people of the flaming continent didn't want to mention. If the creatures there rushed to the flaming continent, they could cause a devastating blow to the flaming continent. And this ghoul could go to the blood world for a stroll, and even kill the grand desolate master of the blood world. This was indeed enough to make him proud. However, Immortal didn't care about this at this moment. He smiled faintly and said, "Then follow me." As he spoke, his mind moved. He disappeared from where he stood in an instant. The next moment, he appeared in the miniature world. Almost at the same time, the ghoul followed Immortal into the miniature world. Furthermore, the instant it appeared, it had already condensed a wind blade. The wind blade was completely invisible as it flew towards Immortal from a distance of 50 meters. In fact, Corpse Ghost had been waiting for this moment. After many battles, his combat experience was extremely rich. He knew that after a person completed a teleportation, there would be a 1-second pause period known as the recombination period. Wormhole teleportation used advanced technology to break down the human body into molecular form. Then, through the wormhole, they would be teleported to the coordinates and reassembled. In the process of reorganization, one's thoughts were somewhat chaotic. This was the best time to attack. Therefore, as long as he could confirm someone's aura, he would follow that person and teleport to the coordinates. Although his success rate wasn't 100%, at least he had never failed. However, this time, when the wind blade was less than a centimeter away from Immortal's eyes, it suddenly stopped without warning. Seeing this, the wind attribute ghoul couldn't help but be shocked. This kid actually reacted. What was going on? Soon, the surprise in his heart turned into horror. Because the wind blade didn't just stop. Instead, it turned around and quickly attacked him. It wasn't just this wind blade. Around him, in the spherical space with a radius of 50 meters, there were actually tens of thousands of wind blades. They all flew towards him. How was this possible? Could this kid also be a mutated wind attribute desolate hunter? It seemed that he had underestimated this kid. However, so what if he underestimated him? This kid obviously didn't know much about the wind attribute. The wind attribute was invisible and formless. Tens of thousands of wind blades wanted to kill a wind attribute powerhouse? Thinking of this, he teased, "Let me tell you what it means to be formless and formless." As he spoke, he didn't dodge and directly stretched out his hands. He opened his arms and welcomed the tens of thousands of wind blades. Then the first wind blade instantly pierced his chest. The smile on the ghoul's face instantly froze. Why didn't his formless and formless technique work? However, he didn't have time to understand. Poo. Hundreds and thousands of wind blades pierced into his body. He was almost directly dismembered by the wind blades. No, it couldn't be called dismembered anymore. It was called mincing. He didn't understand. He didn't understand why his formless and formless technique, which had always been successful, had failed at this moment. Before he died, he raised his head to look at Immortal, who was not far away in confusion. He saw that Immortal's face had an indifferent expression that he had expected it. He said 8 words, "Welcome to my world." In the next second, Pu. The ghoul's consciousness was directly minced into meat paste. As for his consciousness, it disappeared as well. Following Immortal to the miniature world was the biggest mistake he had made in his life. In this world, Immortal was the creator. Immortal was God. He was an omniscient and omnipotent supreme existence. No matter how strong you were in the outside world, you could destroy the universe with a single punch. But in this world, Immortal could destroy you with a single thought. Immortal had once wondered whether he could put Happy, Emma, and her son into micro-world, and whether he could put his enemies into micro-world as well. But the answer given by the system was frowny face. Before the miniature world evolves to a strong enough level, you can't put the enemy in. Unless the enemy is willing. Coincidentally, this guy was willing to do it today. On the grass, Happy and Emma weren't surprised to see Emosher kill a strange guy. They just prepared the bedding for Emosher. They knew that it was time for Emosher to rest. At this moment, they killed the wind attribute ghoul. Emosher said in his mind. System special event sign-in. The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face sign-in successful. Sign-in event. Killed wind attribute ghoul. Sign-in reward. 1 ghoul servant. In the next moment, a ghoul appeared in front of Emosher. This ghoul looked exactly the same as the ghoul he had just killed. The difference was that this ghoul didn't seem to have any thoughts, just like a dead person. However, the system prompted frowny face ghoul servant has no consciousness, and will only act according to its master's orders. It is 100% loyal to its master. At the same time, the system also pointed out that this ghoul servant was a wind attribute ghoul. It had all the skills of the wind attribute ghoul from before. Chapter 471. The ghoul servant was the same as the ghoul from before. In terms of cultivation level, it was equivalent to a level 5 desolate hunter. It didn't look too strong, but its skills were indeed very intimidating. And it was 100% loyal to Emosher. Therefore, it should be of great use in certain situations. Next, Emosher rested in the miniature world for another 2 days. Then he continued to hunt ghouls in the ghoul fire swamp. It took them another 5 days to kill all the ghouls in the unforgiving evil ghost fire swamp. At this time, his kill points had reached more than 360,000. However, Emosher was still not satisfied with this. It had been half a month, but he had only gotten more than 100,000 kill points. It was a little slow, so he didn't waste any time in other places. Instead, he went straight to the Yama forest with the most mutated desolate beasts. Of course, the mutated desolate beasts and ghouls along the way didn't escape his claws. When he reached the Yama forest, his kill points had increased by more than 20,000. It had reached 380,000. The Yama forest was the largest forest on the infernal Python star. Its area occupied almost 1/10 of the entire infernal Python star. In this forest, there were hundreds of thousands of mutated desolate beasts. And in this forest, there were more than 300 kinds of snakes. Most of these snakes were giant pythons. And without exception, all of them were highly poisonous. Therefore, the Yama forest could be considered a veritable forest of giant pythons. For humans, this was a forbidden area. Even if a Grand Desolate Master came, he would only dare to stay here for a short while. Of course, Grand Desolate Masters rarely came to this planet. At this time, Emosher came to the sky above the forest. His draconic psyche spread out 500 kilometers. After a moment of investigation, even he couldn't help but sigh. This Yama forest was definitely the richest and most dangerous forest he had ever seen. If one didn't have strong telekinesis, coming here was almost equivalent to suicide. The species here were rich, and there were many of them. He moved his mind. Bang 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 bang. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all the mutated desolate beasts exploded. Bang 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 bang. In just 10 seconds, all the mutated desolate beasts within a radius of 100 kilometers exploded into a bloody mist. Therefore, in these 10 seconds, within a radius of more than 100 kilometers, all the trees, ground, rocks, and rivers were dyed red. A thick layer of blood mist enveloped the area of more than 100 kilometers. At the same time, in Emosher's mind, the kill points were also increasing rapidly. With just this attack, his kill points had increased by more than 5,000. His speed was a lot faster than when he was at the Will-O-Wisp swamp. He continued to fly forward as his dragon consciousness continued to bombard these mutated desolate beasts. Bang 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 bang. Behind him, he left behind a trail of blood mist that was 200 kilometers wide. As for the infected creatures in the surroundings, they would rush over once they smelled the stench of blood. Therefore, Emosher did not have to waste any more effort to travel. Even if they stayed where they were, there would be mutated wild beasts and infected creatures constantly swarming towards them. Just like that, in just a minute, Immortal had gained more than 60,000 kill points. In just 1 hour he had gained more than 300,000 kill points. 300,000 per hour was still acceptable. Just like that, in less than 3 hours, Immortal's kill points had reached 1,000,000. The system's notification sounded in his mind. Frowny face. Kill points, 1,000,000. Can be upgraded. Upgrade now? Seeing this, Immortal felt a little regretful. If he had known that it was so easy to gain kill points here, he would not have wasted so many days in the will-o-wisp swamp. Immortal nodded. Upgrade. The system's voice sounded again. This upgrade will take 12 hours. Please find a safe location as soon as possible. Immortal was a little dissatisfied. In the past, it took 5 minutes to upgrade. Why did it take 20 hours this time? The system's voice sounded quickly. Because the host has consumed a large amount of dragon consciousness, it will have a huge negative impact on the brain. Therefore, you must rest as soon as possible to recover your dragon consciousness. Immortal nodded. Indeed, his dragon consciousness was almost depleted, and he needed to rest. With a thought, he returned to the miniature world. Consuming a large amount of dragon consciousness was very tiring. Immortal kept using dragon consciousness to kill thousands of mutated desolate beasts was even more tiring. He slept for 2 days. When he woke up 2 days later, Immortal was still a little groggy. Rubbing his sleepy eyes, it took him a full minute to figure out where he was. He yawned and washed his face. Then he suddenly remembered that before he went to sleep, he was upgrading. Thinking of this, he suddenly quivered and completely woke up. In his mind, he pounced on his attributes. Name, Immortal. Level 6 Desolate Hunter, Level 10 Long Yanshi. Immortal could not help but let out a faint smile. He had finally upgraded. At the same time, the kill points in his mind had a new change. Kill points, 0/10 million. If he wanted to upgrade again, he would need 10 million kill points. But in this Yama forest, it was not difficult to collect kill points. He ate the food that Emma brought over and rested for more than half an hour. Then he left the miniature world and returned to the Yama forest. In the 2 days he rested, the smell of blood from before had attracted a large number of mutated desolate beasts. With Immortal's current dragon consciousness, he could only kill the mutated desolate beasts that were level 6 and below. But the lower the level, the more mutated desolate beasts there were. So there was no need for him to pursue killing higher-level mutated desolate beasts. Bang 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 bang, 10 seconds. Just one hit. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all the mutated desolate beasts that were level 6 and below were killed by him. In his mind, his kill points instantly skyrocketed. Kill points, 73,321 million. Previously, one hit could increase his kill points by more than 5,000. Now one hit was more than 7,000. Then Immortal slowly flew forward. As he flew, he kept killing these mutated desolate beasts. In an hour his kill points had reached 500,000. In this day, excluding the 2 hours of rest, he had gained more than 5 million kill points. Then, in order to recover his dragon consciousness, he hid in the miniature world and slept again. On the 3rd day he gained almost another 5 million kill points. In his mind, the system's prompt sounded again. Kill points have reached 10 million. You can upgrade. Do you want to upgrade now? Immortal nodded. Of course. The system's voice sounded again. This upgrade will take 24 hours. Please find a safe place to upgrade as soon as possible. And so Immortal returned to the miniature world again. This time, he slept for another 2 days. After 2 days he woke up. He looked at the stats in his mind again. Name, Immortal. Level 7 Desolate Hunter, Level 10 Long Yanshi. Chapter 472. Only 9 days had passed since Immortal came to the Yama forest. In 9 days, he had risen 2 levels. He had already reached the level of a level 7 Desolate Hunter. If the other Desolate Hunters knew about this speed, wouldn't they die of jealousy? He went to the personal reservoir to check on the sea dragon clone. Sure enough, the sea dragon clone had also risen 2 levels. It had reached the level of a level 7 desolate beast. It was equivalent to a level 7 grand desolate master. And with the strength of the sea dragon clone, it could easily crush a level 8 grand desolate master. If Immortal returned to the flaming land now, with the sea dragon clone, he should be able to stand at the top of the continent. Even if there were some unknown old monsters on the flaming land, they should not have reached level 9. According to the information Immortal had, in the entire flaming land, there had not been a level 9 grand desolate master in 1,000 years. In 10,000 years, there had only been 3 level 9 grand desolate masters. And the lifespan of a grand desolate master was only 1,000 years. Therefore, those level 9 grand desolate masters had already died of old age. Of course, there was no guarantee that a level 8 grand desolate master could quickly become a level 10 grand desolate master after taking some medicine. Therefore, Immortal wanted to continue to improve his strength. He wanted to become a grand desolate master as soon as possible. And the sea dragon clone would become a super desolate beast as soon as possible. In that case, he would be able to stand at the top of the continent. Thinking of this, Immortal had a simple meal and continued to kill. Although it was called killing, it was actually just a one-sided suppression. Bang 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 bang. The desolate beasts exploded again. The forest was dyed red again. The blood mist rose again. In Immortal's mind, the kill points soared again. This time, he needed 100 million kill points to increase it again. Killing for 1 day and resting for 1 day, on average it was 2.5 million kill points per day. At this rate, he could level up in 40 days. However, Immortal felt that it was still too slow. According to his logic, if it took 40 days to level up, why would he waste so much effort to come here? So this time he did not kill for 1 day and rest for 1 day. Instead, he used up all of his draconic senses. After a day and a half, he returned to the miniature world. After resting for 12 hours in the miniature world, he returned to the jungle. He continued to use up all of his draconic senses before returning to the miniature world to rest. Just like that, the cycle continued. The speed at which his kill points increased was 1/3 faster than before. According to this calculation, it would take less than 10 days, at most 30 days for him to advance again. What Immortal didn't realize was that the total amount of dragon intent kept increasing as he continued to exhaust it. On this day, Immortal was flying forward while killing the mutated desolate beasts below. About 200 kilometers away from him, on a mountain top, Li Yundong was in a daze. The group of 5 was looking down at the valley below. One of them said, "Isn't this the Snake Valley? Why can't I see a single snake?" Another person said, "According to the map, this is indeed the Snake Valley." On the other hand, a spiritual psyche master beside him had a solemn expression as he slowly said, "Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist." When the rest of the people saw the spiritual psyche master's expression, their expressions became somewhat dignified. The spiritual psyche master could detect things that they could not see with their naked eyes. Since the spiritual psyche master said so, it seemed that there must be many snake-type desolate beasts in this Snake Valley. The leader of the strong men said, "No matter how difficult it is, we must welcome back the Phoenix Master this time." When the rest of the people heard him say this, their eyes became fanatical. "Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Welcome back the Phoenix Master." The leader of the strong men continued, "We are only the first batch. Our main mission is to scout the way. There are 5 more batches of people coming later. When the Phoenix Master comes out, our Phoenix clan will dominate the entire continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master, dominate the continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master, dominate the continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master, dominate the continent." These people were like fanatical believers. When the words Phoenix Master were mentioned, they were all energized. At this moment, the spiritual psyche master frowned and said, "There is someone 200 kilometers away." The rest of the people immediately quieted down. The leader asked, "Who is it? Is it coming for us?" The spiritual psyche master shook his head and said, "It doesn't look like it. However, he is very strong." Just by using his telekinesis, he can kill mutated wild beasts below level 6. At this moment, he is constantly killing these wild beasts. When everyone heard this, their hearts trembled. Is it a spiritual psyche master? The leader asked. The spiritual psyche master nodded. Yes. The leader asked again. How many people are there? Just him. When the rest of the people heard this, they were a little surprised. The Yama forest was extremely dangerous. Even people like them would only dare to enter it if they were in a group. Now this spiritual psyche master had entered the forest alone. Was he not courting death? The spiritual psyche master did not explain how terrifying the scene he saw was. This guy was like a killing god. Everywhere he went he was dyed red. A bloody mist rose. In all honesty, he could also use his telekinesis to kill mutated wild beasts. However, he could only kill level 1 mutated wild beasts. Moreover, he could only kill mutated wild beasts within a range of 5 kilometers. Compared to this guy who could kill any mutated wild beast below level 6 within a range of 100 kilometers, his telekinesis was not enough. His telekinesis is very strong. The spiritual psyche master said solemnly, much stronger than mine. When the rest of the people heard this, their hearts trembled. Someone asked, will he affect our welcome back to the Phoenix Master? The spiritual psyche master replied, probably not. He seems to be only killing these wild beasts. Why would he kill these wild beasts for no reason? What good would it do him? The spiritual psyche master replied, I don't know, but he must have a purpose. The leader thought for a moment and said, as long as it doesn't affect our welcome back to the Phoenix Master, he can do whatever he wants. The rest of the people nodded. The leader said, send this information to the other teams, and then we will go to the Snake Valley to explore. Soon, they explained the situation to the other teams. The other teams also reached a consensus. As long as this spiritual psyche master did not affect their business, they would not provoke him for the time being. Once they returned to the Phoenix Master, the Phoenix Master would be able to kill this guy with a single thought. Naturally, they would not have to worry about anything. However, these people did not know that they were already within the range of Immortal's detection. Immortal even knew the purpose of their trip by plundering their memories. At this time, Immortal was killing these mutated wild beasts while flipping through the memories of these people. As he flipped through, he sighed, so there is such a thing. Chapter 473. As Immortal killed these desolate beasts, he flipped through these people's memories. From these people's memories, he learned that there was a woman in the dragon clan of the Flaming Land 700 years ago. This person was extremely talented, and became a grand desolate master at the age of 30. She was once seen as the only successor of the dragon clan. During one of her training, she discovered that there was an extremely powerful bird type of desolate beast on the Flaming Land. After she killed it, she obtained the blood of that bird type of desolate beast. After that blood merged with the blood in her body, her strength increased greatly. After that, she fell in love with a man from another clan. According to the rules of the dragon clan, regardless of gender, a dragon clan member was not allowed to marry another clan member. This woman refused to accept, and wanted to elope with that man. In the end, when the dragon clan found out, they fought. This woman was so powerful that she defeated all 5 of the dragon clan's experts. At this time, she was in high spirits and called herself the Phoenix Master. She also gained a group of followers. However, when she was fighting, the man she liked was killed by the dragon clan. In a rage, the Phoenix Master started to massacre the dragon clan. However, at this time, the dragon clan's patriarch accidentally activated the dragon blood in the Phoenix Master's body. Perhaps it was because of the dragon blood and the bird blood in her body. As long as the dragon clan's patriarch willed it, the blood in her body would boil, and even her meridians and flesh would be cooked. Only then was the Phoenix Master subdued. The dragon clan's patriarch killed the Phoenix Master in front of all the dragon clan disciples. However, in reality, he did not really kill the Phoenix Master, because the Phoenix Master was the dragon clan's patriarch's biological daughter. As the Dragon Clan's patriarch, his daughter had committed such a crime. If he did not kill her, it would appease the public's anger. However, if he killed her, how could he do it to his own daughter? In the end, he only made his daughter faint from the pain. Then he secretly brought his daughter to the Python Star of Hell. Because his daughter was severely injured at that time, only the Python Emperor of the Python Star of Hell could save her with thousands of viper bile. The Python Emperor's condition was for the Phoenix Master to marry him. The Dragon Clan's patriarch had no choice but to agree to this condition. In the end, the Phoenix Master married the Python Emperor, and the Python Emperor cured the Phoenix Master. But because of the Dragon Clan's existence, the Phoenix Master could not reveal her identity. That was why he had been hiding on the Hell Python Star for so many years. Now that the Dragon Clan had been annihilated, the Python Emperor had died of old age. However, before he died of old age, the Python Emperor sealed the Phoenix Master in his grave, saying that she would accompany him in death. Now these followers of the Phoenix Master were heading to the Snake Valley to enter the Python Emperor's tomb, open the seal and save the Phoenix Master. Understanding this, Immortal didn't pay any attention to them. Who cares if you're the Python Emperor or the Phoenix Master? Even the Dragon Clan was destroyed by me, so what do you think you are? In the next 3 days he saw another 4 groups of people enter the Snake Valley. Originally, Immortal didn't intend to pay any attention to them. However, not long after they entered the Snake Valley, all the surrounding mutated desolate beasts began to head towards the Snake Valley. Within Immortal's probing range, almost half of the area was gone. This made Immortal slightly unhappy. He looked in the direction of the Snake Valley from afar. No matter what you do, as long as it doesn't affect me collecting killing points, then we will mind our own business. But now that you have interfered with my development, I'm sorry. Thinking of this, Immortal flew towards the sky above the Snake Valley. When he arrived, he used his dragon consciousness to investigate below. He saw that there were many snake-type desolate beasts in the Snake Valley below. There were some that were as small as 5 to 6 meters long, and some that were as large as 1,000 meters. As long as one dared to go down the Snake Valley, one would encounter a venomous snake almost every 10 meters. At this time, the desolate beasts that came from outside the Snake Valley were fighting with these snakes. Immortal roughly understood some things by plundering the memories of these snakes and desolate beasts. It turned out that the Phoenix Master was very good to these snakes when she was alive. Therefore, these snakes had always wanted to welcome the Phoenix Master back. However, the Phoenix Master was suppressed by the seal, and these snakes didn't have the ability to break the seal. Coincidentally, these humans appeared at this time. They could break the seal, so these snakes naturally supported them. However, these mutated desolate beasts in the forest couldn't take it anymore. This was because they knew that once the Phoenix Master returned with her ability, she would lead the entire Snake Clan and dominate the entire Hell Python Star. At that time, the Snake Clan would be the dominant clan, and all the other clans could only submit to them. Therefore, these desolate beasts came to attack the Snake Clan and destroy them to break the seal. At this time, both sides were in a bloody battle. The Snake Valley was said to be a valley. In fact, it was a huge crack that was more than 100 kilometers wide and more than 5,000 kilometers long. If one looked down from a bird's eye view, they would find that this crack was like a huge wound on the Hell Python Star. It was also like a big mouth that was opening, as if it was going to swallow the universe. At this time, in this huge valley, an intense battle was breaking out. At the southern entrance of the valley, thousands of mutated desolate beasts poured in. They flew in the sky, ran on the ground and swam in the water. They surged over like a mountain flood. It was as if they were crushing dry weeds. As they ran, the ground shook. At the entrance of the valley, smoke and dust rose. Smoke and dust filled the sky. And from the other side, a large number of snake clans surged over. They formed a snake tide. Just one look was enough to make one's scalp tingle. These snake clans were of different sizes, long and short, and they were colorful. They crawled over the rocks, the river, and the trees. It was as if a huge colorful carpet was being pulled across the Snake Valley at high speed. The distance between both sides was quickly closing. 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 200 meters. When Emosher saw this, how could he let it go? Based on the current situation, if they were to meet, there would definitely be heavy casualties. How could this be? Whether it was the Snake Clan or the other desolate beasts, they were all mine. Only I can kill them. Thinking of this, his dragon consciousness moved. Bang 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 bang. Whether it was the Snake Clan or the other mutated creatures, they all exploded. In an instant, 1/3 of the Snake Valley was covered in blood and a bloody mist rose. The beast tide started from the front and quickly turned blood red. The snake tide started from the front and also quickly turned blood red. In this Snake Valley, the Snake Clan's density was already very high. Now with the addition of this beast tide, the density was even higher. Therefore, in a short 10 seconds, Emosher obtained 150,000 kill points from this first wave of killing. Emosher couldn't help but feel refreshed. Another 10 seconds. Bang 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 bang. A bloody mist rose together with the smoke and dust. As for his massacre, he continued. Soon, the kill points in his mind rose crazily again. 300,500, 000, 900, 000, 1,000,000. In a short minute, his kill points broke through to 1 million. And it was still rising crazily. Chapter 474. Inside Emosher's mind, his kill points were skyrocketing. Amidst the endless slaughter, this was the only thing he was paying attention to. What he didn't notice was the subtle changes that were happening to his body. His eyes were darker than before, so dark that they were like an abyss. As he looked around, an invisible pressure could be faintly emitted from his eyes. This was only the difference he showed in his human form. If he was in his bloodthirsty demon dragon form, this difference would be even more obvious. However, Emosher didn't know about all of this. Right now, he was only blindly slaughtering. Of course, this state didn't mean that he was about to go berserk. The bloodthirsty demon dragon needed to kill in order to grow. From the moment he became the bloodthirsty demon dragon, he would never go berserk again. The kill points in Emosher's mind were still skyrocketing. It broke through 1 million in 1 minute, 10 million in 10 minutes. In just half an hour, it had reached 30 million. If this continued, it would take at most 1.5 hours for him to level up again. However, as the saying goes, the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. After more than an hour, Emosher's kill points broke through 70 million. At this time, the entire valley was already flowing with blood. The cliffs, trees, flowers, and grass were all dyed red with blood. The rivers in the valley had all turned blood red. Above the valley, a bloody mist filled the sky. Even the scorching noon sun couldn't disperse this bloody mist. Whether it was the Snake Clan or the wild beasts, none of them dared to take another step forward. However, the Snake Clan and the wild beasts both realized one thing. That was, the dead wild beasts were all level 6 and below. If they were level 6, they would be safe and sound. As such, the wild beasts sent out more than 100,000 wild beasts that were level 6 and below. The Snake Clan also sent out more than 100,000 giant pythons that were level 6 and above to attack Emosher. With Emosher's current dragon will, if concentrated, he could easily kill any wild beast that was level 9 and below. However, if they were spread out, they would only be able to blast apart mutated wild beasts that were grade 6 and below. Now that over 200,000 mutant desolate beasts were charging towards Emosher, Emosher naturally would not waste his time to blast them one by one. Therefore, with a thought, he teleported to the back of the beast tide. The dragons will once again spread out and blasted towards the beast tide. Bang 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 bang. The explosions continued. In his mind, his kill points were still soaring. These desolate beasts were too simple-minded. They did not know that Emosher had the ability to teleport. With a single teleport, he could appear behind them from the front, catching them off guard. Bang 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 bang. Emosher continued to bombard the beast horde. On the other side, the snake tribe was watching the show. Their goal was to stop the beast tide. Now that someone was helping them to exterminate the beast tide, they were naturally happy to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. But soon, It was their turn to be frightened. That was because when the mutant beasts of grade 6 and above in the beast tide started to attack Immortal, they had already gathered a large number of mutant beasts. With a teleport, Immortal arrived in the middle of the snake tribe. He used the dragon's will to bombard the snake tide. The snake tide had no choice but to organize the snake tribe of grade 6 and above to attack Immortal. However, most of the snake tribe could not fly. Therefore, when Immortal flew into the sky, they were practically live targets for Immortal. They could not hit Immortal, and they could not run away. They could only watch as their own kind exploded one by one. However, just as Immortal was in the mood to kill, there were hundreds of giant pythons that all swam towards Immortal. These giant pythons were green, white, red, and black. They were colorful, and each giant python was 1,000 meters long. They were more than 30 meters thick. Every time they crawled through the forest, they would leave a deep ravine in the forest. Hundreds of giant pythons came below Immortal. Then they all coiled up. It was as if they were quickly coiling into plates of mosquito coils. It looked like they were going to catapult towards Immortal. Immortal was also shocked by their operation. These guys were really stupid. They knew that he could teleport, but they still used this method to attack him. When he activated his teleportation, their attacks would miss 100% of the time. However, Immortal did not intend to activate his teleportation. Since they were going to attack him, he naturally had to let them know that the mountains were green, the sea was blue, the hair was black, and the hat was green. Of course, it was not his own hat. Then, Immortal's right arm turned into a dragon claw. It directly slashed towards a giant python that was flying towards him. Suddenly, an invisible force slashed towards the giant python that was 1,000 meters long. Hiss! The giant python that was 1,000 meters long was instantly split in half from head to tail. At the same time, the invisible force slashed towards the ground. Rumble! A huge crack that was more than 10 kilometers long and about 100 meters wide suddenly appeared in the entire valley. The crack was bottomless. And on the ground, there were more than 50 giant pythons that were directly split into two. At the same time, the 100-meter-wide blood river on the ground was directly cut in half by Immortal's claw. The river water directly poured into the crack. This 100-meter-wide river poured into the crack for a full minute, but there was no sign of it filling up. A claw that broke the river. This was the wonder of a claw that broke the river. What was even more surprising was that the giant python, which originally had outstanding self-healing ability, showed no signs of self-healing after being cut in half by Immortal's claw. It was writhing and struggling on the ground in pain. A moment later, it died one after another. More than 200 kilometers away, 5 people were looking over here. Among these 5 people, one was a spiritual psychic. The 5 of them were sent to guard. At this time, the others were preparing to break the seal, and could not be disturbed at all. So they sent these 5 people to guard this place. Of course, they were mainly targeting Immortal. If Immortal came over, they would have to do their best to stop Immortal. At this time, one of the level 10 desolate hunters asked the spiritual psychic, "How is it?" However, he found that the spiritual psychic didn't seem to hear this question at all. Moreover, there was an expression of disbelief on his face. This expression made the others very puzzled. "Speak." The level 10 desolate hunter patted the spiritual psychic's shoulder. Only then did the spiritual psychic come back to his senses. Then he subconsciously swallowed his saliva and said, "A claw that broke the river." He said these 4 words. When the others heard this, they were still puzzled. "What do you mean?" The spiritual psychic replied, "He cut the river in half with a claw." When these words came out, the others were shocked. "What? This river is 100 meters wide and cut it in half with a claw? Is he a grand desolate master? Even a grand desolate master can't cut it in half with a claw. This kid, we underestimated him too much." Chapter 475. Immortal's claw broke the river, which made those people's faces turn cold. In the past, there had been people who could break the river with a saber or a sword. But they were all grand desolate masters, and very powerful grand desolate masters at that. Now this guy was clearly just a desolate hunter, but he could actually break the river with a claw. It seemed that they had underestimated this guy. Quickly send a message to the boss and tell them to hurry up. If that guy kills us, we won't be able to hold on. When the boss breaks the seal and rescues the Phoenix Master, no matter how strong that guy is, he will only be an ant in front of the Phoenix Master. So, these people began to send messages to their boss in a hurry. At the same time, more than 300 kilometers away from them, more than 20 people were busy in front of a mountain peak at the end of the Snake Valley. This mountain peak was the mausoleum of the Snake Emperor. Their Phoenix Master was buried here with the Snake Emperor. Moreover, the Snake Emperor had set up a formation here that ordinary people couldn't break. It was even more impossible for the Phoenix Master to escape from inside. These people had been busy here for more than 2 days, but they still couldn't break the formation. At this time, the leader received a message from the front. After reading it, he cursed, "Damn it!" The others asked, "What's wrong, boss?" The leader turned his multifunctional watch over. When everyone saw the message, they all frowned. "I told you, this guy is not easy to deal with. What do we do now, boss?" "Boss, we are the only followers of the Phoenix Master. If we fail this time, or even die in the hands of that guy, then no one will ever save the Phoenix Master in the future." Hearing this, the leader shook his head. "In short, if he doesn't attack, everything will be fine. If he really attacks, we can only fight with our lives on the line. Fight with our lives on the line. Fight with our lives on the line. For the Phoenix Master." The rest of the people spoke one after another. The leader encouraged everyone again. "However, we have found some clues now. When we break the seal and welcome the Phoenix Master, that guy won't be a threat at all." Hearing this, everyone's eyes were filled with fanaticism. Emosher was currently in the middle of a battle, so he naturally did not pay attention to these things. After breaking the river with one claw, he slashed out with another claw. Shwa! Dozens of giant pythons were directly cut in half. Swish! Swish! With a wave of his right claw, the giant pythons were sliced apart. In front of Emosher, more than 100 giant pythons, which were equivalent to rank 10 desolate hunters, could not even last half a minute. When the rest of the giant pythons saw this, they no longer dared to attack Emosher. As for those people who were 200 kilometers away, they all gasped when they saw this scene. Good heavens, this is equivalent to one person fighting against 100 hunters. This guy is too abnormal. Could it be a Grand Desolate Master? That's impossible. The aura he released during the battle was clearly that of a level 7 Desolate Hunter. How can a level 7 Desolate Hunter be so terrifying? I won't believe it even if you beat me to death. After Emosher killed the giant pythons, he planned to continue killing the snakes and beasts. However, at this moment, from the mountain peak not far away, a shocking roar could be heard. Roar! The next moment, rumble. The mountain peak collapsed with a loud bang. Huge rocks tens of meters high rolled down from the mountain peak with a loud bang. They smashed into the blood river at the foot of the mountain, splashing up hundreds of meters high. Rubble fell down one after another. Those mutated desolate beasts were all crushed. And those giant pythons were also crushed in half. For a moment, screams, and wails resounded throughout the entire valley. Among the flying rocks, a figure suddenly jumped out. This figure was actually more than 2,000 meters long. It was actually a giant python with a length of 2,000 meters. This giant python was nearly 100 meters thick. On its body, there were scales the size of houses. Under the sunlight, they shone with a blood-red light. Its pair of eyes shone with a cold light. When it opened its mouth, a pair of sharp teeth were like a pair of silver-white arrows. At the same time, as it opened its mouth, a dark green liquid was sprayed at Emosher at an extremely fast speed. Emosher's dragon consciousness had already enveloped this giant python. His figure flashed as he dodged the dark green liquid. At the same time, he was also slightly shocked. This giant python was actually a strong mutated desolate beast. It was equivalent to a desolate master. Originally, on this planet, a strong mutated desolate beast that was equivalent to a desolate master would not appear. But now, This strong mutated desolate beast had appeared in front of Emosher just like that. However, although Emosher was a little surprised, he did not feel that it was unexpected. After all, it was not like he had never seen creatures in the hunting ground whose level exceeded the hunting ground setting. He dodged the giant python's venom attack. Unexpectedly, this giant python's body flipped forward. From its neck, a withered head actually grew out. Two-headed giant python. 2 heads, 2 huge mouths, each shot out 2 streams of venom. Emosher's figure flashed again, and dodged the 2 streams of venom. These 2 streams of venom were dodged by Emosher, and landed on the cliff behind him. The cliff was instantly corroded, forming 2 huge pits with a diameter of more than 50 meters. It could be seen how terrifying this giant python's venom was. Emosher was also secretly shocked. If he was touched by the venom, he would be melted in the end. That giant python's 2 consecutive attacks did not hit Emosher. Its body flipped forward again. Another head flipped up from its neck. 3 heads, 3 huge mouths, and 3 streams of venom were sprayed out. However, to Emosher, this was simply child's play. This giant python had 3 heads, but he did not expect its intelligence to be so high. This kind of attack was simply a joke. Soon, that giant python saw that it could not hit Emosher. It raised its head from under its neck again. 4 heads, 5 heads, 6 heads, 8 heads, 9 heads. In the end, it actually grew 9 heads. Each head was more than 50 meters wide. And when these heads opened the blood-red folds of flesh at the back of their heads, it was even more terrifying. However, even if Emosher had 9 heads, it was still quite easy for him to hide. He kept dodging the attacks of these heads. At the same time, his sharp claws slashed down. Swish! An invisible force slashed down at the giant python below. Clang, 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 there was the sound of metal clashing. A crack appeared on the huge scales on the surface of the giant python's body. But that was all. It actually failed to cut its body into 2. This surprised Emosher. One had to know that his claw could break a river. Now it couldn't even completely cut open the scales of this giant python. This guy's defense was really not to be underestimated. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.